People here for a town council meeting. This is democracy in action, and it's lovely to see. Let's work our way through the agenda then. Item number 1 is questions and comments from the public and councillors. So I'm anticipating a lot of questions, maybe on item number 7 on traffic. So I'm going to propose taking those under the item as we get to it. But do we have any questions on things that aren't related to traffic? And because there are so many, we'll just operate on hands up. And somebody, Sarah somewhere, has got a roving mic. So do you have any questions that aren't on traffic to start with? Excellent news. There we go. Okay, lovely. Item number 1 done. Good, we're flying. Item number 2 is apologies from councillors unable to attend the meeting. Do we have any apologies, Sarah?
Councillor Potter.
Brilliant, thank you. I think Councillor Parker is coming as soon as she can from another commitment, so she should be here soon. Okie doke. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Do any councillors have any declarations of interest? Dave. Oh, sorry, I have to use the mic for me, Dave, sorry, only because we're on the stream and all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Technology, wonderful. Yes, my usual declaration, as I live on Market Street, I am directly affected by traffic issues. As a South Ward councillor, I also have the opportunity to listen to my constituents regarding from those who work, live and shop in town, and so therefore I have had a request to recuse myself from this debate, but I am not intending to do so. Thank you.
That's fine. No, I agree with that, Dave. I think, no, there's no need to declare where we all live. We all live in Bradford. We're all affected by this like everybody else in the hall. That's what you're going to say. Fine, lovely. Okie doke. In which case we will move on to item number 4, which is to approve the minutes of the last meeting on the 9th of July. Has everybody had a chance to look at those? Are we happy with them? Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. Let me finish this item, and I think we'll all be very happy to say our names. That is not a problem, seeing as you're a long way from our little cards. The minutes. So item number 4 on the minutes. Anybody have any comments on the minutes from the 9th of July? No. Do I have a proposer to adopt those? Tim and a seconder. Katie, all those in favour? Lovely, thank you. I'll sign those afterwards, Sarah, is that all right? Brilliant. Thank you very much. Item number 5 is matters arising. I've got 1. Does anybody else have anything beforehand? Nope. Okay, so the one that I've got that's arisen since the last full town council meeting just regards Becky Addywood. So, as many people will be aware, the council has been involved in an ongoing court case, which has been resolved in the last week or so. So what I wanted to do, just so it was minuted and so that people are aware, and it's a little bit long, I apologise, but I'm just going to read out the statement we put out on that so that everybody has that, and then councillors are very welcome to comment afterwards if they wish. So the Town Council is pleased that the High Court case brought against the Council regarding Becky Addywood has been dismissed. The judge, His Honour Judge Blome, KC, has ruled in favour of the Town Council, confirming that the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, between the Friends of Becky Addywood, Frobor, and the Town Council is binding, that the Council has complied with its duty to consult with Frobor in the production of the management plan for the woodland, and that the claimants, Lisa Otterbarry and Christopher Humphreys, do not have any trust claim over the woods, nor does Frobor. The judge concluded that the Council's attitude to negotiations appears to be clear and open, and that Mr Hogg's report to committee is the management plan. It did not need to be agreed, and that I, the judge, consider that it satisfies the agreement requirement. The Town Council is particularly pleased that the judge recognised that the officers and councillors involved in the case have undertaken their roles in good faith. I have no doubt that, having heard the evidence, the Council has not negotiated the acquisition of the woods in bad faith and has sought to apply the Memorandum of Understanding as they understood it. That was from the judge. The Town Council deeply regrets that it was obliged to spend considerable officer and councillor time and £463,000 and 5p in legal fees and disbursements fighting this case. It was not possible to withdraw from the case as it was brought against us. Despite undertaking 2 rounds of mediation and offering a number of opportunities to settle and to stop this legal case, the claimants pursued the case to trial. The next step is to seek a cost award from the court, and the Town Council will be working rigorously to recover as much taxpayers' money as possible. The Town Council plans to undertake its duties under the MOU and hopes that the Council and Frobel can move forward with a positive working relationship. We stand by the fact that we've engaged with those individuals in good faith throughout this process, attempting to avoid this expensive and time-consuming case. There's a bit more on the website where I'm quoted, but this is from me as opposed to the statement. So the court case has taken up a considerable amount of councillors' and officers' time over the last 2 years, and it's been particularly stressful for those involved. And I would like to thank all town councillors and officers, especially Ian Brown, our Chief Exec and Town Clerk, Chris Hogg, our Green Spaces Officer, Councillor Alex Kay, Chair of our Environment and Green Spaces Committee, and Mrs Kate Nottage, a local resident, all of whom gave evidence in the trial. And along with Councillor Katie Vigar, who was Mayor at the time, worked tirelessly on bringing this to a resolution. The next stage will be a hearing where the Town Council hopes the judge will lift the current injunction so officers can refocus on the responsible management of the woodland. At the hearing, the Council will be seeking a costs award and will look to recover as much taxpayer money as possible. Throughout this long process, we made every effort to avoid such a costly trial. That is all on our website, and it will be in the minutes as well. I appreciate that was a long statement, and also we will communicate with the public as things move through different stages as and when we're able to. Any councillors have any further comments on that before we move on? No. Okay. Let me go back to the agenda. Item number 6 is Chair's update. So this is more of me talking, I apologise. Oh, we were going to introduce ourselves, aren't we? That's a good point. I'm very happy for us all to say our names. If we start with Dave, and we'll go around this way, that's not a problem. Dave. Dave, you're going to have to use the mic. I'm really sorry.
Keep forgetting this technology. David Garwood, Councillor for South Ward.
Councillor Emma Franklin for South Ward.
Simon McNeil-Ritchie for North Ward.
Kate Besant for the South Ward. Sarah Gibson for the South Ward.
Yeah, go on.
Ian Brown, Town Clerk.
Jack Vittles, BOA South, Councillor.
Katie Vigar, Councillor for North Ward.
Tim Trimble, Councillor for North.
Alex Kay, Councillor for North Ward.
Sam Blackwell, Councillor for North Ward.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so, where was I? Item number 6, Chair's update. So I apologise, this is more talking from me. I will go through it as quickly as I can, and again, it will be attached in written form to the minutes as well. So, just a few sort of engagements and updates. On the 1st of August, it was good to meet with our new Member of Parliament, Brian Matthew. We spoke about the main issues affecting Bradford and Avon, including our traffic project, concerns over the old golf course site, flooding and local businesses. We look forward to a positive working relationship with Brian in the coming years, and we'll be following up with further meetings in the coming months as well. Later on that week, on the 7th of August, it was an absolute delight to officially open Poulton Play Park at our Play Day. I know it's been eagerly awaited by so many people, and it was great to finally see so many children enjoying that play park on that morning and in the weeks since. I think we're planning to make that Play Day at Poulton Park a regular event in the future years, so a huge thank you to all of those involved, and particularly the council officers who put their time into organising it. And just to mention as well, we are still fundraising and working out how to get Stage 2 funded for more equipment in that play park. So please do get in touch if you're able to help out in any way. Contact the council. We're very, very happy to have a conversation with you if you're able to help out. On the 1st of September, it was a real pleasure to attend a community here in St Margaret's Hall. The event was in the aid of Alzheimer's and dementia support, and there was lots of tea and cake, and there was a magician. It was just thoroughly lovely. So I want to sort of give a big thanks to Councillor Parker for all of her hard work on that event. I know they raised quite a bit of money. Then on the 6th of September, we had the start of our annual walking festival, which did happen and was relatively well attended given the absolute deluge that happened that weekend. I was stood there with them under a very soggy tent on the Friday morning as some, frankly, crazy people turned up to go for a very long walk in the pouring rain. But I take my hat off to them, and they do an amazing job organising that festival. Bradford on Avon walkers are welcome. So that was lovely to see, and if the weather's better, I look forward to joining them on future walks, definitely. And then on the 8th of September, it was a real joy, actually, to go to a special service at Holy Trinity Church, focusing on climate change and how we can help preserve our natural world around us, and particularly focusing on what we can do here locally in Bradford. Packed out church, lovely service, and it was really great to be able to share some of the ways that we as a town council have introduced projects and policies that put the climate emergency at the heart of everything we do as a town council. And then on a similar theme later that day, we had our flower and produce show here in the hall again, and it was staggering, given how bad the weather's been this summer, to see the variety and quality of all the produce on show, and some incredible recycled items that people were showing, some, quite frankly, ridiculously big vegetables. It was all really, really fun. Again, more tea, more cake, and all for a good cause. So that was thoroughly enjoyable. And then the last couple of bits, I also visited the hub on Church Street on the 12th of September to meet with the manager there. And I really just want to mention that to make sure people are aware that it's there, that it is open for everybody to walk in and use their services. I won't list all the things they do because they do an awful lot of good in our community, but they have a food bank there among other things and other services. And I know they just started a grief support service there as well. So do pop along and use that facility if you feel you need to. And then the final thing I have on my list is just last week, it was lovely to join the Bradford on Avon Fair Trade Group in Wallington Hall to welcome Patrick, who was a Kenyan tea farmer. And I know he's been given lots of talks around the local area, but it was really, really interesting actually and really engaging. He's an incredible speaker. And it was amazing to hear all the different ways that they're benefiting from fair trade, and to talk a little bit to Patrick about how we're so proud of our continuing fair trade status here in Bradford. So a massive thank you to the Fair Trade Group for hosting and organising that. And I know they're also looking for some new, ideally younger perhaps, members to get in touch with them and join their group. So please do get in touch with them if you're interested. And I think that's everything on my list. I will put that with the minutes as a written copy as well. Hiya, Jenny. That's quite all right, don't worry, you've come at the perfect moment. So, we will move on to item number 7, which is traffic. So to agree the initial traffic management scheme for the town centre to put forward to Wiltshire Council. So what we'll do is, I've just got a few bits to say on this topic, and then we'll move into the questions on this. Like I said, we'll do raised hands. We've got Sarah, who's over there, with a microphone. We will do our best to get through everybody. So, let me find my page. So, yeah, before we begin on this topic, I just want to really reiterate a few points and just remind everybody how we're going to try and structure it. So, first of all, please can everybody attending here this evening remember to remain courteous, respectful of each other and of all councillors. I'm fully aware this can be a very emotive topic, and it is an issue that has dogged Bradford for decades, even centuries. So it would be great if you could remain courteous and respectful to each other throughout. I will take the questions on traffic in just a moment, and although we are usually very lenient on timings, I'm going to have to be much stricter this evening to make sure that we get through everybody. If you wish to speak, you will be able to speak, but we'll keep to the 2 minutes a bit stricter than usual. So please try not to cover points that have maybe already been raised or go over previous ground. That would be perfect. And then following the meeting, and to help our sort of council staff, I'm sure you'll appreciate there's quite a bit of packing away to do this evening. If you can make a relatively swift exit out of the building, that would be really appreciated. So as I say, this is obviously a decades, if not centuries problem, centuries-long problem that has dogged us here in Bradford. And I've read stories which explain that traffic was a problem here, even in medieval times with horse and cart and them having to widen the bridge. So it is a particularly thorny issue, and we all know that there's no silver bullet. But what we can do is put forward to Wiltshire Council a scheme that we hope will alleviate some of the worst effects of the traffic on the town. So a reminder that Wiltshire Council are the Highways Authority, and that we have had to work closely with them throughout this project, and we will have to do so moving forward as well, whatever we agree to do. To that end, I'd like to thank Councillor Gibson and particularly Councillor Trimble for their work on liaising with Wiltshire Council to get us to this point. I think it's the furthest that Bradford on Avon has got on a traffic project in a long time, and I commend them for that, as well as all councillors and officers. I see this as very much the end of the first part, which sounds like a very long drawn-out process, but it really is, and hopefully later this evening we will have something that we can put forward to Wiltshire Council, and from then on it will be with them to design a scheme that we can then work through the process from there. Wiltshire Council, via their Cabinet Member for Transport, stated earlier this summer, both in a letter and also at a meeting that was held with a lot of our councillors here this evening, that the council needs to demonstrate an overall level of public support at a local level before any further work can be undertaken. They also say they would be content to move forward with any of the three options from the modelling report that the Town Council favours and would be willing to consider other options if required. To that end, what I would urge councillors to consider this evening are areas of consensus, not only among ourselves but across the town as a whole. There are an awful lot of areas of agreement where I think we can really bring long-lasting benefits to this town as a whole. To that end, I personally don't really see this as a binary choice based on the options from the modelling report, but rather an amalgamation from the entire evidence base that we have accrued over the last years and decades even. So the Future of Transport Survey, the Atkins modelling report, the consultation done following the modelling, the final comments in the last few weeks, and of course what we see and hear from residents on a daily basis and see for ourselves firsthand as residents here in Bradford. So we have an opportunity this evening to make some real progress and break the deadlock on traffic issues in the town. And there is an overwhelming consensus, I think, that things cannot stay the same. So we have to grasp this opportunity now while Wiltshire Council are listening to us, I think. So I apologise for sort of a long rambling spiel at the start, but I wanted to make things clear about hopefully how we can structure things as councillors, but also to be really clear with everybody here in the hall and watching at home as well. So with that, I'm very happy to take questions. So what we'll do, we've got some written ones as well, but I'm going to take the in-person ones first. So if you would like to make a question, that is absolutely fine. Please raise your hand, and Sarah, who is halfway up over there in the cardigan, will come round with the mic. So raise your hands. You've got one right next to you, Sarah, to start with. The chap in the, I feel like question time. The chap in the red cardigan.
Okay, I guess I have to make this a question. So, is it not the case that the option A, the one-way system, which I support, is the only solution which will enable expansion of the pavement, or significant expansion of the pavements, and improvement of the environment in the town centre? I think I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. I think, Tim?
That is actually not the case. The other main option that was considered by the report, option C, will allow you to widen pavements on Silver Street and the upper part of Market Street. The difference between option C and option A is that with option A, you can widen the pavement right at the bottom of Market Street. Now that's between the Swan Hotel and Cobb Farr estate agents. So the answer to your question is no, that's not true.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tim. Yeah, Simon, go for it.
I'm just going to read from the Atkins report, just to put that into some perspective. They say that option A enables significant footway widening on Market Street and Silver Street. Most importantly, this option enables widening at several key locations where pedestrian safety is currently a concern. In option C, it says, however, due to use of single priority narrowing location, this option does not permit footway widening in the southern section of Market Street, which is currently a key safety concern. So I don't think that contradicts what you're saying, but it perhaps puts a different emphasis on it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Simon. The other thing I sort of forgot to mention at the start as well is I imagine there's an awful lot of this that will probably come up naturally in debate as well. So I'm happy to sort of take a few points of fact, that's not a problem, but we'll try and get through things in the debate as well. Do I have any more raised hands? Sarah, do you want to work your way down? There's two on this side, and I can see a couple on that side as well. There was the chap on the end of the second row, and then the chap on the front here.
Good evening. Can you all hear me all right? My name's Martin Newman. I've got an extract here from the full report from Atkins, and I'll just read it. Analysis of responses to the consultation highlighted 3 key issues which local people want to see addressed. 1, pedestrian cycle safety. 2, traffic volumes. And 3, air quality. We've heard just now that there will be some pedestrian safety issues that can be helped with perhaps nearly all of these proposals. Air quality, I think you could have asked anybody that a proposal of this type would make very little difference to air quality up or down, and that's what the report says. That leaves us really with traffic volumes. Traffic volumes, as far as I'm concerned, is the key issue. You don't make a substantial improvement in the town unless the volumes at peak times are substantially reduced. However, in the executive summary and extract, it says, traffic volume was identified as a key issue by the prior consultation. The scope of this study cannot consider measures to reduce traffic volume in the town. So what we have is you've had a study which you know was not able to address the issues that people cared about, but you've still gone on and done it. And possibly spent £50,000 of public money in the process. I think it would be wrong to accept a partial solution from Wiltshire Council. Their highways people are largely interested only in maintaining vehicular movement along their highway. And I think we should press them to not say that about this and to really address the issue that we want addressing. So although I'm personally in favour of a properly constructed one-way system to give improvements in the centre of the town, I'm not in favour of it without a substantial reduction in traffic volume. What do you guys think?
Thank you. Sarah.
As Martin, as a long-time town councillor, dealing with traffic over many years himself, yeah, okay, only over 3 years, he'll know that, as was stated before, Wiltshire Council is the Highways Authority. They are the Highways Authority for the entire county. So if we, as Bradford and Avon, said that our solution to this problem was to remove all traffic from coming through our town and therefore sending it through Staverton, which would be the alternative, quite understandably, that Highways Authority is not going to be able to consider a scheme that merely moves the traffic out of our remit and into a different space. I mean, you know, I'm a Bradford and Avon resident living on one of those main roads. How much do I mind about the traffic going to Staverton? I would if I had to talk to the people from Staverton. So right from the start, despite our interest in having a much wider county level analysis, the analysis that we were able to convince them that they were prepared to do is centred on the town. Once you've centred that analysis only on the town, we can only look at what comes in, what goes out, and where it goes. So this is not a Wiltshire-wide solution, and it isn't looking at improvements to the A350, which might move traffic further away, which the county is doing as well. This is looking at what we can do within the confines of our town to make the traffic that is coming through have less impact on us. And Martin quite rightly says, the Atkins identified that in a way, none of this will make a huge difference to the air quality. Having said that, you know, when we did air quality monitoring during the social distancing scheme, we were aware that moving traffic produces less issues for us in terms of air quality than stationary traffic does at the moment, while the traffic is mostly fossil fuels. So Martin's quite right. We are not looking at how we might reduce the volume. Having said that, you know, the more tortuous and the more amounts of mitigation that we put into any system that makes it even fractionally slower to get around this town will almost certainly reduce the number of people who are trying to travel all the way from Weymouth to the Forest of Dean, which is the ones that we do know come through at the moment. Because if you put that into Google, it comes through Bradford. But Google is very time specific. So a lot of what we're talking about now is a fundamental idea, but which will need to come with quite considerable amounts of mitigation for various parts of the town affected by it. All of that will make it slower and more difficult to come through the town, which will decrease the amount of through traffic. Doesn't stop the people of Bradford from driving from the top of town to Sainsbury's, of course. So, you know, there's always going to be some traffic volume.
Thank you, Sarah. Simon.
As an independent, I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to agree with both a Lib Dem and a Conservative at the same time, but I'm going to try, because I think you're both absolutely right. There is a much bigger picture here, and the Curb report pointed out that we are at the centre of a sub-regional or even regional road system, which is why we suffer so badly from through traffic. And it's been quite a fight, as Martin and as Sarah knows, to get even Wiltshire Council to accept that the majority of the traffic is through traffic. That in itself has taken years. We have done that now. I entirely agree with what Martin is saying, and I think what Sarah is saying, is that there is a much bigger battle, if that's the right word, that needs to be fought here, but it needs to be fought over a longer period, and we need to be careful about accepting steps forward when we can seize them. We do not have any powers on the roads ourselves here. We have to negotiate through Wiltshire Council, and Wiltshire Council have opened the door just a tad to allow us to have this debate, and this is what we're having. And what I hope we will do is that we will seize the opportunity to get started. That is all we are doing tonight, is talking about getting started. There is a long, long journey, and the journey will be both in the design of the ultimate road system that happens if we go forward at all. But the second thing is, in the wings of that, there has to be an ongoing effort to educate Wiltshire Council into the very real needs and struggle that this town is having as a result of a wider traffic problem. And I understand that they don't want to have to face up to that. Why would you? But we must make sure that they do face up to it, and we must work with them to try and help them solve it as best we can.
Thanks, Simon. Lovely, thank you. Yeah, this is definitely, I definitely see this as the end of the beginning of this project, if that makes sense. Do we have more questions? I have no idea where Sarah's gone. She's here. Yes, hello.
Hi, thank you. As I understand it, by the way, Wiltshire Council have allocated, Wiltshire Council have allocated a member of staff to help with this, so I think that's quite helpful. COVID didn't have many benefits, but one of them was an opportunity to have a pilot scheme. And what we saw once we took the one-way bridge out of it, was that traffic flowed very well. We're a town that needs to future-proof ourselves. And yes, whilst we can't address the whole system of potentially a bypass or other road building, what we can do is look at how we make traffic better for our town. Also, Wiltshire as a whole has an 81% requirement by the new government for house building. That's more houses, that's more people. We're a town that relies on independent businesses as well. And those independent businesses told me they are desperate for a proper one-way system, similar or the same as the one they saw through COVID. That's why many of them supported the petition I started, and thank you for those of you who signed it. It's also an issue about safety. The other week, a lady trying to cross the road had both of her feet run over. That's about 50 bones broken and a long stay in hospital. As a town, we need to think about our small businesses. We need to think about air quality, and I would suggest by the fact that we have signs up saying please switch your engines off to avoid idling, that maybe stationary traffic does have an impact on air quality. But also we need to listen to our residents, and our residents have said they want traffic to move. I do hope that we look at the support that people have had for either option A, which is the best of a mediocre bunch, or the COVID system, and go ahead with this motion without maybe too much delay. Occam's razor would suggest that if we've already had a system which works, we should perhaps go ahead with that one instead of putting too much red tape in place. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you. I can see Alex and Tim. Alex first and then Tim.
Thank you very much for that. I just wanted to say that we don't have to have an A, B or a C. What we have to have is something that starts the process. And there's a lot more mitigations we can put in place beyond what we had during COVID, which was a good trial of something that could improve the pedestrian safety in town. But we need to look at a lot more options and to persuade Wiltshire Council of perhaps having the entire settlement area be only 20 miles per hour, for example, which would remove an awful lot of the signage of 30, 20, 30 and the confusion. We want to maximise our pavement width everywhere we can, and really not just Market Street and Silver Street. Maybe we would like to expand elsewhere, but what we need to consider is that this is the beginning of a process where we see something goes awry because of what we put in place, we find a mitigation and support from Wiltshire Council to put that, to correct that. So we already know from the process that we went through during lockdown, or actually during the end of lockdown, where the one-way system worked very well for me as a pedestrian through town, and I know some people really didn't like it because I've had an awful lot of emails from you, thank you very much. But I would say that there were mitigations that we can put in place to remove that, to improve that, sorry. And what we need to do is not consider that we're going to vote on something this evening, and I hope we do vote on something that we can all agree on this evening, but that it's going to change everything and make everybody happy, because we know we don't make everybody happy ever, but that we can think about all the things and constantly consider that we're on a road to improving this process. We know we can't look at the total volume of traffic coming through Bradford because that is not being studied by Wiltshire at the moment. But as Simon, I agree with Simon, well, what has been said from the council already, but we are not going to stop the volume of traffic because we all like to get places in cars. And frankly, I don't suppose there's anybody in this room that doesn't use the roads in the town. So please take some comfort that what we want to do is put something in place that is just the first step. And there's a lot more things you can do than one-way systems. There's speed limits, there's chicanes, there's, I don't know, what else? There's loads of things that we can do to actually calm the traffic. And I've said too much already, but I just want you to understand that we're not having to go for A or C or anything. We can go for a range of things that we can encourage Wiltshire to support us in.
Thank you, Alex. I think, Tim, you had a hand up.
I think it's really important to bear in mind that just because something worked during COVID, when traffic levels were considerably lower most of the time, and even in the month or two before the one-way system was taken out, they were still slightly below pre-COVID levels. So that does actually make a difference. And the reality is we're likely to get more traffic in the future than we have now. That's the reality. That's what the Department for Transport predicts. So just be careful. The other thing is, and Alex mentioned mitigations. I mean, that includes pavement widening, it includes chicanes, it includes things like pedestrian crossings. Now, pedestrian crossings will hold up the traffic, and it may even include things like redesigning roundabouts or inserting roundabouts where there's a simple junction right now, because that is a really good way to slow traffic down, because people have to slow and look and see what's coming. But the net result of all those mitigations is that people will not be able to drive through as quickly as they did during COVID. So there's two reasons: mitigations and the fact that the traffic volume is actually, or was actually quite a bit down and is likely to increase in the future. So I'll just wave those sort of warning flags in front of you on that point.
Thank you, Tim. Next question, hands up. Sarah's already got somebody. Brilliant. Hello.
Hi, good evening. Robin Clark, Bradford resident for some 35 years now. Got a multifaceted question I'd just like to put to you guys, please. Firstly, from reading on the Town Council site a few weeks ago, I'd like to know who was responsible for issuing the statement on the Town Council website that 58% of respondents were in favour of option A, and how is the Town Council going to rectify this misleading statement that might suggest that the respondents were in fact Bradford residents, when there is, to my knowledge, no evidence to support that fact? Based on this, I don't believe that the Town Council has hard evidence that option A is a choice of Bradford residents, and therefore I would ask that the Town Council moves to approve option C, or a flavour thereof, based on what I'm hearing so far, based on the consultant's professional evaluation of the town's traffic and pedestrian problems, which by definition, option C, surely must deliver the best solution for its residents across the whole town as a whole. Why wouldn't it? And finally, please would the Town Council assure me that they will not succumb to the whims of respondents who are not necessarily residents, who will not have the necessary expertise to evaluate the longer term needs for our town, and who are basing their demands on unrealistic traffic options such as during COVID. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if we can put up page 50 of the Atkins report. So it's page 50 I'm looking for, which is paragraph 6.4, conclusion. And that looks, yeah, there we go. I don't know if you can make it small enough to see. Make it smaller, then we get the whole thing all together. Okay, the colours have been bleached off there. There is a misperception that Atkins recommended option C, and whatever your feelings are, whatever my feelings are, I think if we're going to go forward, we have to go forward on the basis of accuracy and the facts, not distortions of them. Atkins put up this chart which compared the benefits of the different options they came up with. Now, ignore the bit about bus service impacts and everything to the right of those two columns, because they subsequently had to withdraw those because we showed that they were fallacious and unsuitable. And we got back to the three things that we were looking at, which was safety, traffic congestion, and improved air quality. And of those, the traffic movements and the air quality were all adjudged to be amber for all three, so no difference between them. On the first one, though, which is the one that we identified originally as probably the more important of the three, which was safety for both pedestrians and cyclists. And it put option A as green, option B as red, and option C as amber. And in doing so, you've heard me read out some of the things that it said, but it clearly, on the basis of their initial assessment and design, had a preference, not maybe necessarily a strong one, but a preference for option A. That is what they preferred. Now, because they were somehow along the lines, either of their own volition or through instructions from others, we will never know, I suppose, they were told to rule out option A because of the impact on the bus services. Now, as I say, we subsequently demonstrated that if it was going to impact Bradford and Avon, these are national figures, if it was going to impact Bradford and Avon so badly to slow down the buses, then it was going to have the same impact on buses in Bath and in Trowbridge and in Westbury and in Warminster. And therefore, this poor bus had no chance of getting anywhere. Anyone getting on a bus in 2041 in Bath should basically be looking for retirement, because they're not going to be getting there in any early stage. And so because of the fact that it was just, it proved to be a rather spurious objection, it was removed. And Wiltshire Council had the good sense and grace to withdraw it. So we're back to the original three. So while you're right to say that in summarising their report, they had to go with option C, in fact, their conclusions showed a preference for option A. Now, that doesn't mean, we all know through our own experiences, the strength or otherwise of Atkins Consulting. It is advisory, that's all it is. But what I'm saying is that if we're going to rely on what Atkins recommended as the way forward, then please don't rely on it to support option C.
Thanks, Simon. Tim.
Perhaps we could look at page 45. There's a table on 45. That's absolutely correct that Wiltshire subsequently retreated from their position that the buses were an important element in considering the traffic. That was incredibly irksome because we had spent quite a lot of time discussing buses with them and questioning them about that particular requirement. So that is absolutely true. I think it's a bit unfortunate the way the Atkins report has reported the buses as being a major factor. But at the time it was written that that is absolutely correct. It was a major element. So if you look at table 5.6, and this is not the buses, this is looking at traffic, transit times across the town, and you look at the north-south route, which is the top line in table 5.6, you will see that the predicted 2041 do-nothing time is just under 10 minutes. It's 9 minutes 54 seconds. With option A, that goes up to 19 minutes and 42. So you're almost doubling the time it's going to take you to travel north to south of an evening in the rush hour with option A. If you then look at the other options, you will see that 2041, option C, and I should say 2041 is used, this is a standard technique in traffic modelling, so I understand, is that you project forward because any system that you put in ideally will be there for decades. So you need to project forward with Department for Transport supplied increases in traffic. But what you see is that option A is 19 minutes 42 and option C is 8 minutes 07. And if you look at the transit time, that is going from the Bath Road with the junction of Ashley Road down to the Trowbridge Road just south of the Texaco petrol station. So these problems with traffic build-up, and it happens particularly in the evening, although it does happen a little bit in the mornings as well, but in the evening it is associated with a lot of people returning from work in Bath or Bristol or from the north, generally M4 direction. So as in the mornings there's a net migration from south to north, and in the evenings that is reversed. But you'll see that actually, whilst the buses are badly affected, and initially it was said, oh, we can't run a bus schedule on this sort of delay. In fact, it's really just a symptom of the traffic delays that you would expect generally. It's not just the buses. So what I would say is, again, this is a bit of a warning flag, is the problems with buses were symptomatic of a wider problem with potential congestion. Now, it's not just the congestion, because frankly, I don't actually care if people have to queue for an hour. But the problem with them queuing is that they're polluting the atmosphere. And that's what we don't want.
Thank you, Tim.
So,
Alex, I think you have your hand up. Sorry. Excuse me. You can, if you'd like to ask a question, you can raise your hand, but please don't.
Sorry.
Please don't.
Sorry.
Thank you. Excuse me, you cannot carry on talking over the top of councillors. If you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand.
Okay, I would just like, thank you, Jack. I would just like to say a couple of things about that. Firstly, we're talking about predicting what might happen with the traffic in 2041, which actually I don't think I'm going to be doing much driving by 2041, and if I am, keep off the roads, okay? But I have to say that I have worked all my professional life with complex modelling, not of traffic, but of other things which are based on laws of physics. And what you can't do, we can hardly predict what the traffic's going to be tomorrow afternoon, let alone 2041. So the idea of choosing a scheme that we're going to put the first step of in place, hopefully before perhaps the year end, based on what might or might not happen to the bus in 2042 seems absolutely ridiculous to me. The other thing is, we do not want to judge our traffic quality with how quickly it can race through time, through town, sorry. And obviously, this is how it's predicted it would do it with option A, which we don't have to go for one way or another. But we've got to realise that we are going to be on the first step of a process, as I said earlier, not what is happening in 2042. It might or might not be a 10%, what's the increase every year?
It's 10% in 2041.
So the idea is, if we keep going like this and we have a more than 10% increase of carbon burning fuel by 2042, we will have failed so badly as a civilization, let alone a community, that the air quality is going to be awful, the traffic is going to be awful. We have to think about what we can focus on to improve the traffic experience in town right now and modify it as we go ahead. We cannot take these numbers to be of any meaningful value whatsoever.
Thank you, Alex. Dave, I can see you got your hand up.
Yes, thanks very much, and thank you, Alex. The gentleman that actually asked this question in the first place talked about the type of person or the kind of person that has contributed to the consultation exercise. And I take his point. He may well be right, he may well be wrong, I don't know. What I can tell you, and I know this is fact, that as I walk through, or down Market Street, through the shambles, all around the town, the co-op, Lamb Yard and such like, and even going for a quiet pint, you know, it becomes a sort of almost MP, excuse me, Sarah, MP surgery, with people queuing up. And do you know what? One single person has stopped me and has said, I love option C. Every single one is looking for the one-way system that I've spoken to anyway.
Thank you, David. Okay, we will take another question. Where's Sarah? There's Sarah. Hands up for a question. Oh, she's already picked somebody. Lovely. Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, hello. I wasn't really aware of options A, B or C's when I wrote in with this question, but I'll be as quick as possible if I can.
Thank you.
During the pandemic, a one-way system was implemented at the north end of town, which proved to be effective in reducing congestion and therefore pollution. A one-way system could also be implemented using Trowbridge Road and Froome Road at the south end of town, which is the other bottleneck. Excuses about time acquiring planning permission are ridiculous and unacceptable, as this problem has existed, to my knowledge, for over 30 years, and the solution has been obvious all this time. Moreover, is it not Wiltshire Council's responsibility and priority to do all in its power to reduce pollution in Bradford on Avon? In which case, is it not remiss of the Council in not preventing the congestion that causes the pollution? The pollution is caused by traffic, including juggernauts, coaches and trucks, being trapped in the town by the bottlenecking each end of town. The bottleneck towards Sainsbury's has been described by the council as traffic calming. Is this not a flagrant disregard for public health and in contravention to Air Quality England Regulations 2000?
Thank you. Anybody have anything to pick up on? I don't think anybody's got any comments at the moment. I very much imagine that's going to come up in our debate as we go forward, so we'll take it under that if we may. Sarah, there's more hands up. There's a chap right at the back, and then maybe if you work your way down towards the front on this side, and then we'll swap over to the other side.
Okay. My name is Christopher Taylor. I live at Tembridge Yard. Now, for those of you who don't know where that is, that overlooks, it's just above the weaving shed, it overlooks the town bridge. So I see an awful lot of what's going on in town bridge. On page 2 of the Atkins report, it says the focus of this report is for slow and steady movement. So why isn't there a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in the centre of town? And why aren't the police enforcing the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits that are in town? I see frequently, if you're going out on the Froome Road or the Trowbridge Road, vehicles, including lots and lots of vans, going at 30 to 40 miles an hour, and nothing happens.
Thank you. In terms of police enforcement, that is a conversation we've been having repeatedly with local police. Trust me, we agree with you on that one. In terms of speed limits, I suspect that will probably come up more broadly in our debate, so I'm happy to take it then. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Sarah, we've already got somebody with the mic. Hello.
Hello, my name's David Thompson. I don't think you have to look forward to 2042. You could have looked forward to just tonight. Getting here, we had to park our car because it took us 20 minutes to get nowhere. So looking forward, let's look to now and what the speed of the traffic is. The point is that we need to reduce the time to get from one side of town to the other. That means a steady flow, and that's what we had with the one-way system before. Now, if that's 20 miles an hour and I'm moving at 20 miles an hour, that's fantastic. But at the moment, there are scores of cars stationary all the time, most times of day, polluting the air. And now we don't need to go through that, why that's bad for people, bad for youngsters, bad for people with asthma, etc. So all we have to do is speed the traffic through the town, keep it a constant speed. 20 miles an hour is fine, I'd be happy with that, and a one-way system, great. But to look at the systems that Atkins did there to say by 2042 we're going to double the time to get through time would be ridiculous. We've got a problem now that we need to sort.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sarah, who's next? Sorry, yeah, hands up near where Sarah is. We'll work our way down this side. There we go. So at the back there. Yep. Hello.
Hi, I'm Louise.
Hi.
And I was... Oh, okay. In that final survey that you did online, when people were allowed to submit, I think it was a several hundred character comment, did you ask where people were from in that survey? I don't remember having to fill in my postcode. Maybe lots of people commented that were not from Bradford and Avon area. I just needed to ask that question.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't believe there was any requirement for postcode when you entered those comments. Who's next, Sarah?
Barbara here. I wanted to draw attention to the issue of the health and safety of pedestrians on the town bridge. I know whether there's a one-way system around town or not, that will still persist. But if the traffic is very slow, it will be more harmful in terms of emissions. And certainly the safety is something that frightens me to death on a daily basis. When can we please have a second pedestrian-only bridge?
I agree wholeheartedly with you on getting a second pedestrian bridge. We do have a project in progress that's just gone to Wiltshire Council a few months ago now with a outline case, and we're moving that forward as quickly as we can. So yeah, speaking personally, I'm very, very keen to make sure we get a second pedestrian bridge, definitely. Where's the microphone gone? Hello, sir. Fine. Okay, fine. There was a public consultation online. Katie.
Which was promoted in the town council newsletter that goes
Yes.
to everybody. So it was widely promoted.
Yeah, absolutely. Lovely. Okay. Where's chap here? Hello.
Good evening, Derek Flexer here, Newtown resident. It fills me with horror, the idea that we're going to start a journey and a whole load of analysis and are we or aren't we going to put in roundabouts? Please, let's go for option A and start it on Monday morning.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Sarah is running across to another raised hand.
Why don't we start it tomorrow?
What's that?
Why don't we start it tomorrow?
Well, if only. Whatever it is. Not the Highway Authority, Simon, I'm afraid.
Hello, a quick one, if I may, from me. The first point being one of, we've got to be very careful when we talk about all residents agree that, because all residents don't agree that. So we've got to monitor our language very closely. During the one-way system, which has had less or fewer cars than we now see, it was very, very good for very many parts of the town and very, very bad for other parts of the town. Our historic town, buildings being cracked from vibrating traffic that was stuck outside, for instance, my house. Call me a NIMBY at your will, that's fine, but we need to look at the place as a whole, and if democratically we decide to do something and some people miss out or lose out, well, so be it. That's democracy in action. But can I just gently say to everybody that if we've decided, as most of the country has, that we don't like experts, and it appears that none of us like Atkins, we shouldn't therefore say that we know better. I don't know all of you, but I suspect many of us are amateurs. Some of you may be talented amateurs. But we're dealing very dangerously with a thing that people call heuristics, shortcuts, rules of thumb. It's common sense, isn't it, mate? It may not be common sense. That's why Atkins and their people are professionals. You may not like what they came out with, but you're a very brave man or woman if you decide that you know better because you don't like the options they came up with. So in coming up with what we're now calling some sort of hybrid solution, just be very sure that you know what the outcome is, because I don't know what the outcome will be, and I'd wager that none of us do. So if we want a hybrid, that means a lot more analysis, a lot more waiting, and a lot more trying to suggest we know the answer, because it's common sense, isn't it, mate? It simply isn't. You don't want to hear it, but it simply isn't common sense. We need to do a lot more study if we want to do something that's none of the options and not decide on do nothing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. One of the things I'm very keen to consider, whatever we decide tonight, is that we really make sure that if there are areas of the town that are negatively impacted by anything that's implemented, we have to make sure there are mitigations in place and that they will be protected. And the other bit to pick up on is, again, whatever we decide, going forward, we will have to work very closely with Wiltshire Council highway engineers. They, as you say, are the experts. They will, I'm sure, as we go through this process, throw more things into the mix. There will be statutory consultation with things, with fire service and police, and I'm sure schools as well. So all of that is to come, and it's, the end of the beginning. Simon.
I just want to endorse that, actually, because my feeling is very strongly that we should be respectful of experts, but we should not be intimidated by them. So it's right to question, and it's right for us to understand, and I think that's where we get to. The one point I would make, and I'm sure Sarah will support me on this, the COVID method that we had, that was purely designed to tackle COVID. It was not a trial, in spite of what people think, of a new road system. However, we made sure that as we had to go through that process, we tried to capture as much information by putting up additional data capturing cameras in order to learn from it. It was a rare opportunity for us to see that at work. What we weren't able to do, and I think that's one of the reasons why I fully appreciate what people in New Road and others are worried about, is that because it was only a temporary structure, we were not able to put in mitigating circumstances. Anything from resurfacing the road, to crossings, to all the other sorts of measures that we would certainly want to put in place. And not just there as well. There's an opportunity as part of this exercise to look at other parts of the town slowly, I would imagine, with Wiltshire Council, but to look at other parts of the town to see what we can put in place there to also slow down the traffic and make the experience better for everyone. So it's a very, very valid point. Experts, we are not experts. I'm not even sure we're talented amateurs sometimes, but let's hope we get to that point. We do have local knowledge. And one of the things that we might talk about at the end of this is how we capture some of that in the process going forward, so that it's not driving the design, but it's certainly informing the design. And I would like to see that happen.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you. We've already got somebody with the next question. Hello.
Hello, I'm Clive Roberts. I've lived in the town since 1986. I've been a chairman of the local rugby club for the last 10 years. I'm not now, I've just given it up. So I know my way through the town. And what I don't understand is why you haven't got some sort of assessment of the pinch points in the town. So that's what I've done on my own. Because I'm a computer scientist, I like data of the type that I can understand. And I understand that when I go from my house and I go out to Froome Road and I travel through it and I travel up through the town and I want to go out to Winsley to the rugby club. That takes me 11 pinch points. 11 pinch points in that town, in this town. And that, if anybody therefore going up through in that sort of way, that's what you're hitting. Also, of course, if you're coming back down, you still hit those pinch points. Now that becomes slightly one less if you go on in Bath Road. And so you get 10 pinch points, and so on. So I won't go any further than to make the point that somebody should be looking at this. I think the council should be looking at this. And I did send you a paper on this last week. Okay? If I go just a little further on it, the whole business is to try and say, if we put that one-way system in place, what does it do for these pinch points? It takes 7 pinch points away. 7. So if I look at my way through the town, when we make a one-way system, which was like it was in the in lockdown, then in fact I lose 4 or 5 of the pinch points that I have at the moment. Now that will definitely allow traffic to move faster. The pinch points come into 2 categories. It's the narrowing of the streets, or indeed it's the pedestrian crossings. Obviously the pedestrian crossings are there for a good purpose, and as long as they're judged properly, we have to keep them there. But for crying out loud, if we put the one-way system in place, we therefore gain width on the road, so those who want a wider pavement, it will happen all the way through the north part of the town. I hope that makes sense.
Cheers, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, one of the things I would say, that I just want to pick up on one of the things you mentioned there about faster traffic. That's never really been anything that's actually come through in our consultation, that people want faster traffic. The sort of the steady flow of traffic certainly came out, and I think one of the decisions we have to make as a council is about, are we prioritising the fast progress of traffic through the middle of our town, or are we looking to make sure that pedestrians have a more pleasurable experience walking around our town? And I think as a town council, we can only really control what's in our hands, and one of the things that is in our hands is making sure we protect our residents from dangerous traffic, make it a nicer place to walk around, and also potentially help our businesses as well. So everything will be a trade-off, obviously, but on traffic speed, I don't think we've ever really, that didn't come up as a top priority or come out in the modelling that's something we want. Steady flow of traffic, I understand, is a different thing. Anybody else on that one? No. Where's the microphone gone? I can't see it. Hello.
Oh, hi, my name's Sharon. I think my question was sent in before, but I can read it out to save you reading it out.
You're welcome. You're welcome to read it out. Yeah.
Okay. As you may be aware, in Bradford and Avon, we have levels of walking to school at St Lawrence and Christchurch we can be proud of. This is great for the health and habits of our future generations and in terms of reducing school time traffic. However, we know that walking to school drops off dramatically when extra heavy two-way traffic is forced along primary pedestrian routes used by our pupil pedestrians and their families. The consequences include heavy traffic centimetres from elbows in Mount Pleasant and impossibility of crossing roads such as New Road and Sladesbrook, not to speak of the insidious dangers of significantly increased particulate pollution. We had direct experience of this when Lee Park Road was recently closed for sewer work. Heavy traffic came down through Sladesbrook instead. Why would councillors introduce any traffic system which increases the risk to our most vulnerable pedestrians? Surely they should be top of our list for protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I share your sentiments. We want to make sure that we protect our vulnerable pedestrians, whether it's school children, people in wheelchairs, mobility scooters. I'm pushing a pram a lot at the moment, and the pavements are, frankly, terrifying in some parts of town. So I share those concerns, and I'm not an expert in sort of statutory consultation, but I would have liked to think the schools will be involved in that process. If they're not, I think, as Simon mentioned, we can talk about how we shape the next stage, and I think we will be speaking to Wiltshire Council and making sure they do engage with the schools, because obviously that's an incredibly important area with lots of kids walking there. So whatever we go for, I want to make sure that they're included in any further discussions and specifics of any design. I have no idea where the microphone is. Right at the back. Hello, sir.
Hi. Can everyone...
No, you're going to have to use it
of
for the
course.
stream.
Okay.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Right. On to just two quick questions or points. During COVID, which has been mentioned as that system, obviously there was much less traffic, but there was also the bus coming down New Road, had to come right the way down and then turn around to the traffic island at the bottom and go back up again. That is the bus coming from Trowbridge to Bath. Going from Bath to Trowbridge was fine because it was able to go down Silver Street, but it couldn't make the return journey without that detour. And I was informed, I don't know what the position is now, but I was informed that the bus company would not continue with that arrangement. Therefore, people wishing to catch the Trowbridge to Bath bus would have to walk right up to the top of New Road to catch it there. In other words, they'd have that route through New Road that would be cut off. The other thing is that we felt that the idea of a bus gate, I only found out what a bus gate was when I came to the presentation at St Margaret's Hall some months ago. And what it involves is traffic lights, in fact, in favour of buses when they come up, and it's a bit all triggered electronically, by wireless rather. Now, lots of people see reports about bus gates as being a special area laid out on a road saying bus gate, and traffic has been fined for going through it. So I haven't actually seen any written literature explaining exactly what a bus gate entails. And I think people read bus gate and say, oh, can't have that, because people will go through it and get fined. Is it possible to actually clarify that? But I also must say that I'm not absolutely sure now of the present position, the present attitude of bus companies to the COVID arrangement, if that involves, as I understand, option A.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, on the bus gates, I know they were included in option A and C. I think we discussed this at some length at the last full town council, and the feeling that I got from fellow councillors is that we were a little confused by them as well and didn't perhaps see how they fit in to that system. So we'll see how things go with the debate, but I think they'll probably look overly complicated. Tim, hello, you're raising a hand. Sorry, thank you.
On bus gates, I would say it's a kind of catch-all term. So the bus gate that was referred to in the report was a specific arrangement that was traffic light controlled with a transponder on the bus that activated the traffic lights as it approached. But there are other forms of bus gate as well. What Wiltshire Council have said is that they are willing to consider a system that does not have any kind of bus gate in it, or they would also consider actually putting one in, but that is something that needs to be decided. But you're right insofar as you say that the bus company have said that they would not run a D1 service that goes up to the top of Mason's Lane, goes down New Road as far as the Kingston Farm roundabout, and then back up. They say that is not sustainable in the long term. So that will not be an option.
Alex, I think get your hand up.
I'd just like to say on the bus gates thing, as Tim says, they are a catch-all, but the main problem with them is you still have to have two-way traffic in what was otherwise a one-way system, which would then completely negate the widened pavements that you'd gained by having any kind of one-way system. I think that the other thing is we asked Wiltshire Council whether they would be prepared to put things in and we could trial it. And the one thing they absolutely were not prepared to do was to put in the bus gate and take it out again because it's so incredibly expensive. And they hadn't actually completely sorted out how they would deal with other roads like Whitehill and Whiteheads going into the system. Because obviously you can't just have cars coming even though there's not that many of them from Whitehead, so you might have to have lights there and things as well. So it's expensive and complicated and confusing generally to motorists, and well, personally I'm really not very much in favour of them.
Thank you, Alex. Dave.
Just a quickie, you might be interested to know that when I spoke to the bus driver at length, he loved the one-way system. And the going around to the bottom of the roundabout and coming round had no problems for him whatsoever.
Okay, well, microphone has gone somewhere, I presume. Yes, hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Forget a lot of this stuff. As a pedestrian, my major concern is traffic, of course. And my concern is not traffic on the road, it's actually traffic on the pavement. Especially on Silver Street, we have seen occurrences where people duck around onto the road. And my wife has seen several cars actually drive several yards along the road, on the pavement, sorry. And I think perhaps one option could be, at strategic points, to have bollards along the side of the pavement to protect pedestrians. That's it, regardless.
Brilliant, thank you. I think the sort of specifics around things is certainly something that will come at the next stage, and I can't really rule anything out at this stage. The nub that you hit on about being dangerous with things mounting the pavement is basically the number one reason that I want to make sure we do something. I want to make sure that this town is safer to walk around for our residents, because at the moment it's borderline astonishing that nobody's been really seriously injured or killed, frankly. So that's the number one reason why I want to make sure we do something. There was some hands up. Tim.
I absolutely agree with you. Driving on pavements is really dangerous. And I've actually been sent videos from various residents and sent them off to the police, but I'm not entirely convinced that the police actually did anything about that, which is frustrating. But if you've got a specific section of pavement that you're concerned about, write to me and I will get it looked at, and we'll see if we can put a bollard there to protect that stretch. It's not always possible because sometimes there are services right underneath the pavement, and then that means you effectively can't touch it. But we can certainly look at it and try and get something done. But it's definitely a practice we want to prevent wherever possible.
Thank you, Tim. Dave.
You're going to be getting a letter from me, Tim. If you live on Market Street, you just have a look at the curbstones.
Dave, I've tried to put bollards on your street for the last 10 years and not managed.
Yeah, exactly. And they put in a yellow box instead. And for those of you that have driven through the yellow box will know just what fun that is. And yes, we did ask them for bollards, and there are all sorts of reasons. It may well be services, I don't know, but we couldn't get them, even a bendy one, or 2 or 3 bendy bollards. So, yeah, I take your point.
Thank you. Who's next? Yes, hello.
Anne Seward, Coppers Hill. What contingency plans have you got for either A, B or C for residents of Whiteheads Lane, Brewery Court and Coppers Hill if you make Silver Street one way only? We've had problems with the COVID system that ambulances couldn't get through. it was taking 45 minutes to get home to Coppice Hill from Trowbridge, ran the one-way system. There were ambulances that had to stop outside the Swan and hoof it through. Had they had patients that needed taking through, they had to carry them down Coppice Hill, through the shambles, or the same would be Whitehead's Lane, and over the road to the Swan. I've sent all of you photographic evidence, you should have all seen it, from where there's been problems this year alone between the 5th of January and the 15th of February. We had problems with flooding, roadworks, all sorts of other things. And there were 11 instances when I tried my normal time to leave Coppice Hill, and the only way I could get out was to drive up Silver Street. The last time I counted, there were 28 cars alone owned in Coppice Hill. I don't know about Brewery Court or Whitehead's Lane, but are we all going to be stranded at home and cannot get out? People had vet appointments, people had to get to the RUH. I personally have got animals and livestock that I go to twice daily, and there was no way I could have got there. I'd have been stranded at home. Nobody has as yet been able to give me any form of contingency plans, either Atkins, the previous highways during the COVID system, or anybody else. The ambulances just couldn't get round. There was one instance when I was talking to a PCSO in Silver Street when the road was narrowed and she couldn't get it through. It was on blue lights and it just had to wait till the system moved to get through. Surely residents are as important as the traffic for our own safety.
Thank you. Yes, so I think any scheme that does go forward certainly needs to be flexible and resilient to make sure that it does cope with any unexpected occasions, and I did see the list that you sent through, so thank you. Again, to mention, I'm sure, I've said this earlier as well, but there will be statutory consultation that Wiltshire Council have to undertake with emergency services. So all of these things, I hope, will come through that process, and they'll talk to them, and I'm sure they're going to have an awful lot to say about whatever system Wiltshire Council highway engineers start working on for us. So a lot of that will come out in the wash, which I appreciate is an unsatisfying answer at the moment, but it's what we've got. It is the answer. Nobody else? Sarah, question. Can I just have some raise of hands? Who's left still to speak, just out of interest? Who have we? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, thank you. Yes. Oh, no. Where's the microphone? Where is it? Yes. Hello.
As a resident and someone walks through town most days, pedestrian safety is paramount. But I have to say that we all need to take responsibility for our own actions. When I walk over the town bridge, we have all been taught to face oncoming traffic. But the times that people don't move over, and it just doesn't make sense. Obviously, we have to make allowances for people with prams and mobility scooters, but you need to face the way you're going from the library towards the co-op, and it's safer. But people don't take that responsibility, and we all need to take responsibility for our own actions. However many schemes there are, we've got to be sensible.
Yep. No, I agree with all of that, certainly, definitely. Who else has questions here on the front?
Hello, my name's Andrew. I've got 2 questions. First, I want to thank the councillors. You have decisions to make, and sometimes they're hard and you can't please everyone. Like judges, it goes with the job. Now, because this is divisive, I want to ask something specific about leaving at the end of the meeting. I know someone who hasn't come because she's afraid that there might be another shouting match outside. What arrangements you've got in place so that we can all feel safe, perhaps invite some other people, because by the end of the meeting, some may be happy, some may be angry or frustrated. And the second question is this. You've all received the final opinions of up to 600 characters from members of the public, perhaps hundreds of them. We haven't seen them. You haven't published a report on them. So you will be making a decision based on information that we don't have. Are you going to be making a habit of that?
So, thank you. So I'll take the second question first, and then I think Alex wants to come in on the first part. In terms of the public comments that have come in as the last part of the consultation, we're making all of those publicly available in full. Alex, you want to come in on anything?
I was just going to say that that we are a civilised, pleasant town, and the idea that you should consider that we would have altercations outside. We are doing our best as the town council. As individuals, we all have a different view. As Jane quite rightly said, we have to take responsibility for actions. And if there's anybody in this room that thinks they're going to stand outside and either abuse other residents or other councillors, I think that I personally will be phoning the police and making sure that does not happen. So please do not behave differently than you do every day that I see you in the shambles and on squeezing along the bridge and making way for each other. We're a lovely town. Please do not fight each other over the traffic. We're going to do the best we can, okay?
Yep. I've got nothing more to add than that. Thank you, Alex. Yes, hello.
Hello, my name is Jeremy. I'm the Sustainable Travel Lead for Climate Friendly Bradford on Avon. I'd like to say to the councillors, just to remind you, just under 4 years ago, the council passed a motion to recognise and address the climate emergency. Since then, globally, things have only got worse. Our widely backed and supported neighbourhood plan and town vision and Wiltshire's climate strategy all press the need to promote modal shifts to less carbon intensive forms of transport. The neighbourhood plan states that policies in this plan aim to discourage unnecessary traffic, with objective 6 being to encouraging people to walk or cycle rather than use their cars. Now is the time to grab that bull by the horns and, as a top priority, install wider pavements and cycle lanes, bring forward better bus access and implement a town-wide 20-mile-an-hour zone. On a wider point, the town vision has the aim and priority of promoting and supporting active travel choices which help to reduce the impact and volume of traffic across the town. However, there will always be pressure from motorists to create more space for cars and vehicles in the direction they are going, especially in the rush hour. Their capacity to congest is legendary. Option A will only enhance that, letting congestion build up across the whole town and ending up with town-wide gridlock. We will never get rid of congestion. Or we can, with support for option C, through a selection of traffic management measures, decide where these pinch points of rush hour congestion will be, and through the sat-nav offer of a choice of routes, indirectly diffuse that pressure. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. I think we've probably covered most of that in different answers, and we'll, I'm sure, cover parts of it again as we move through the debate, but thank you for that. Do we have any further questions? There's a couple. I know.
Well, I think maybe the best thing is, rather than councillors all chipping in on all the questions, or not all of us, but if perhaps just you answer the question, Jack.
That's fine. I'm happy to answer them, and I think there's an awful lot that we've probably covered already. That's fine. I've lost track. Yeah. So if you've got a question, that's absolutely fine. Please don't go over ground we've already gone over, and we'll try and if it's covered already, it's covered already. If not, we'll try and go through it when we debate. Where has the microphone gone?
Yeah. Question: if a new road became part of the one-way system, at the moment with a 30-mile-an-hour limit, it's actually pretty dangerous for the residents to sometimes step out of their homes and to access their cars, and there are frequent accidents on that piece of road. If it became one way, it'd become even busier. So if we had to put up with that, would it be the case that the speed limit would drop from, say, 30 to 15 or 20?
I obviously can't give you a direct answer about what the scheme will be in terms of the speed limit, but I think there's probably broad consensus among councillors and among everybody in this room that we need to look seriously at lowering speed limits where we can around the town. So would be supportive of doing that, definitely. Yes.
Hello. Yeah, this is my first flavour of local politics. I lived in Bristol before, so I've arrived to this debate quite late, and I must admit that I must comment and say that the whole process to me has been a rather strange mix of what feels like referendum, sort of pressure groups, sort of expert opinion, and it seems that traffic flow and something as important as this should probably be weighted towards an expert opinion, and it feels rather in this room. I know we're all rather emotional. We all have a right to say our opinions, but it does seem to be decided in a rather strange manner to me. I would like to make a comment as a cyclist that option C, yes, exactly, and I do actually cycle in town. A lot of people talk about cyclists safely, but I don't see a lot of people doing it. But my honest opinion would be that option A actually would make the town a lot less attractive to me as a cyclist. It, as my friend there said, it pushes congestion around the town. It means that there's less options to avoid the traffic. So I'd rather keep it where it is on an A road, to be honest. But I would also just like to say that it does seem a very strange option to push it around the town. Option C and some of those more nuanced options gives us at least some opportunity to work in a more nuanced way with this problem. And it strikes me that option A is a rather emotional sort of feel behind it and a push towards that. The evidence is based on a time when people weren't going to work. It was a completely crazy and different age, and it seems that people are harking back to that. So that would be my opinion. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I certainly appreciate the word nuance. I think we can all agree this is a very nuanced situation by the opinions we've heard tonight. So thank you. Simon, you your hand up.
Yeah, just following up though, I would just say that on that basis of following expert advice, given what we've just seen earlier on in the evening, that Atkins actually went more for option A, then that's the advice you would presumably be recommending. They recommended option C because they were not allowed to go ahead with option A, which is what they originally identified as the better one.
Sorry, no, that's fine. We won't go drawn to back and forth, but we take your point. Thank you. We'll take the question there. And then Sarah, are you all right to come down to the lady at the front who's been waiting ages? But we'll take the question with the mic. Yes.
Okay. My name's Ivan Wiggum. I live on Mason's Lane. Every day I witness two-way traffic jams 6 hours a day. During the COVID one-way system, we didn't have anything like that. I recognise reduced traffic. I understand that. But nevertheless, the one-way system that we had allowed traffic to flow. I'd also like to make a comment about the report, because the report assumed the option C and the bus gate. So statistics that Councillor Trimble quoted and the outcome of the report, as we've heard, as Simon has said, they both, when you judge those things together, if you take the bus gate out of it, then the conclusions of the report and the statistics are undermined. So if we're going to rely on experts, and I'm not suggesting we do this because I don't want us to be spending any more money, but we would have to revisit the entire traffic study, taking the bus gate option out of it, and look at it afresh on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, come to the lady at the front who's been waiting a while. We'll try and get through the final few questions and comments now as we try and sort of move through things. So again, yeah, if you've got anything that's already been covered, that's great to leave it, please, and other bits I'm sure we can pick up in debate afterwards. Sorry, go ahead.
Hello, yes, I'm Alexia. I live at the top of town, and... Sorry.
Is that better?
Yep.
Just a wider point, it seems to me, I may be wrong, but the facilities are all in the south of the town. The doctors, the dentists, Sainsbury's, and so a lot of... Sorry, is that better? Yeah. The facilities seem to be based in the south of the town, and we all have to drive down to the doctors, the dentists, and the supermarket. And given that you've looked at projections going to 2041, wouldn't it help the traffic situation if we had more options up at the top end of town?
Thank you. It's a separate point, but I take it on board, and I'm sure it's something that will be covered in future council meetings. But thank you. Okay, can I have raised hands? Who's left? Don't think we've got too many at all.
The name's Greg Baker from Chandler's Tinings. It seems to me, in actual fact, that we've only got one of these systems that's been trialled, and that's option A, basically, and that was trialled during the COVID period. The other two are unknown identities, in actual fact. So I think that gives the good spur, in actual fact, as regards which way we should go. If we do nothing, then we're likely to end up with this problem in another 30, 40, whatever years' time, in actual fact. And I think that, as a number of the councillors have said, that we've got to go with one of these options. My preference is option A. It's not the ideal one from my point of view, where we live, and it's not necessarily the ideal one for the town. But it has been trialled, and it's proved that it has worked. Yes, I know the traffic may have been slightly lighter then, but the traffic varies up and down anyway. So let's stick with that and go with that. If we do nothing, we're likely, as I say, to be here for a lot longer and achieve actually nothing at all. From the point of view of getting traffic through the town, I think we do need some clear ways so that there aren't all the blockages coming in and out. Now, the study only dealt with the centre of the town, so we've got to think about the outside parts of the town so that, yes, you can get traffic moving through the town, but if you don't clear the stuff up Trowbridge Road or Frome or wherever else, etc., you're back to square one again. So I think it was Councillor Kay that said that this is a starting point, and yes, I agree that that's what it is in actual fact, and there is other stuff that we've got to do afterwards. The last thing I would like to see, to be honest, actually, in order to slow the traffic down, is more sleeping policemen or bumps in the road. We've already got enough potholes, etc., so we don't want any more stuff to damage the underside of cars, etc. So I would rather see something like a 20-mile-per-hour limit for the whole of the town, etc., expanding out as far as we need to go. Okay. The only other thing that you could possibly do is to stop some of the heavy traffic from coming through, these big lorries that are coming through, which shouldn't be coming through anyway, but they still seem to creep through somehow or other.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sarah, you wanted to come in on this one?
Sorry, I just wanted to make one point about the social distancing scheme, which Simon has already made, but perhaps I'm going to reinforce it because it doesn't seem to... we only had between 60 and 70% of the traffic while we had the social distancing scheme in place. It was not intended to be a trial of a one-way system. It was intended to give wider pavements. And I think I was a great advocate of it. I was instrumental particularly with Simon and Dom Newton, who isn't here anymore, but in getting it installed at the time at great difficulty. And I cannot stress enough the huge numbers of emails that I had every single day objecting to it. Not just to the one-way over the bridge, but just throughout the time it was there. So although it may well be that there are lots of people in this room who enjoyed it, we mustn't forget that that is not the unanimous view of this town. The objections were constant. I think my friendship with Bridget Wayman, which is surprising, right, is due to the fact that she and I, as she was cabinet member for transport at the time, shared an inbox that was phenomenal. So please don't think, and let's get romantic about something that perhaps wasn't absolutely as perfect as we might remember it to be. I'm not saying it didn't work very well in certain ways, but let's not be too romantic about it. I say that as the advocate.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, just a couple more because we've been going for quite a while, so I have no idea.
Yeah, a resident from Newtown. Do you think a useful starting point to this would be to reclassify the road running through the town from an A road to a B road?
I think it would be a lovely idea. I have no idea how to start that process, and I'm gonna look at Wiltshire Council colleagues and assume this is not possible.
We talked about classifications for roads. It's certainly way beyond our pay grade, I'm afraid.
It's an intriguing idea, but I'm not sure what actual practical effect it would have. I mean, I suppose it might deter some long distance sat-navs, yeah, maybe. But sat-navs work on, how long is it going to take you? And they will send you down some pretty narrow lanes. And they don't really care whether they're A or B roads or C roads or completely unclassified. So I'm not sure it would really help.
Brilliant, thank you. Alex?
It would not be a decision that the town council would have be able to make. And I do know the biggest problem is that Wiltshire Council will not let a 20-mile-an-hour limit through Bradford on an A road. So if we could reclassify it, that would be great, because we could have 20 miles an hour across the bridge, which would be very sensible. What other counties seem to be able to do 20-mile-an-hour limits on A roads, and we just need to lean on Wiltshire to do that, I hope.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Okay, last couple of questions. Can I just have hands up who's left, just out of interest? One, just the two. There we go. Lovely. The one with the mic, and then the chap, the row behind you.
Okay, hi there. I want to mention the big elephant in the room. In the next couple of months, the government is going to announce new mandatory housing targets. We kind of know that they're going to make their housing 1.5 million houses, new houses, their policy flagship policy. There is a very real chance that in the next 50 years, Bradford is going to need to grow substantially. We know that the only financial way we're going to get a bypass is by accepting more houses. These houses will get built somewhere. I genuinely believe that we will incrementally need to increase the volume of houses that we accept over a 50-year period. Why don't we take this as an opportunity to discuss the elephant in the room and try and find a way of making a bypass work?
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah, I know lots of people have mentioned bypasses before, and that road has been taken previous years. At the moment, it's not something we're looking at. It's not something that we think is going to be available to the town. I take your point on board about thinking about housing and thinking about the future. I'm keen for some limited development to take place for affordable houses in the town. One of the things I worry about personally with the bypass is that it can maybe open us up to more development along the bypass to be able to afford the road. But thank you. Food for thought, definitely.
Hi, my question is, how do you as councillors know that you have an accurate picture of what our town wants? Because I know that when I got to the website and it said that so many % didn't think that option C would work, it was less than 1,000 people that answered that. Of a town of 10,000, that is a tiny percentage. I'm not saying that if every 10,000 person resident answered it, it would still have the same result. I also know that with the comment box, lots of people were writing in, and I have kind of heard of stories of people not from Bradford entering those. But I mean, my question is, how do you know that, like, as you go into debate and making a vote, how do you know that you have a reflection of what the whole town wants? And just with respect, Dave, when I hear you say that no one has said that option C is great, I guess you're not hanging out in some of the places that we are as well. I mean, so that's raised a bit of concern for me, where we have a voting member of the council that has actually said, like, an anecdotal story about how they haven't interfaced with anybody with C, where I know that I've emailed, I think I've been emailed all the councillors my thoughts about it as well. So my question again, how do you know you have an accurate representation of all of us?
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really, really good question. And one of the things I would definitely raise is that with a lot of the consultation, although as a percentage it can look quite low compared to other towns, it's actually considered a very high response rate. But I take on board your point about it still being a relatively small percentage. But it is a very high response rate. This is an incredibly engaged town, as we can see. So we do obviously take all of that on board. And again, to reiterate what I said earlier, I'm looking at the entire evidence base that we've got, which is all of the consultation we've done, the modelling report, people's comments and questions that have come into my email inbox, in person, walking around the town, experience of living here, all of that put together. The other thing I suppose to mention is we don't live in it's not a direct democracy, it is a representative democracy, and we have been elected to make decisions. They will be tough decisions, they will be sometimes divisive, and we have to make those decisions. And if you disagree, that is not a problem, we can talk that through. But yeah, I think we've really tried to be as consultative as possible throughout this whole process and try to listen to what everybody is saying. And I can assure you that none of the 11 of us here tonight take any of this lightly, and we have thought about it at significant length, as I know everybody in this room has. So it's not a perfect answer, but I reassure you a bit, hopefully. Okay, I think we're probably pretty much finished with questions and comments from the public, so I will now look to councillors to make further comments and thoughts. Do I have anybody who wants to make a comment or thought at this stage? Katie?
Well, I was just going to say, didn't you in the interest of the people who sent theirs in advance,
yes,
you perhaps should read theirs out.
Good point, I should do this. So I did flick through them a second ago, and I think most of the answers have been covered, but as we said we should read them. So Barney Weston has a question. Why would the Town Council not accept the recommendation option from Atkins, the specialist consulted, when it was, as stated by the consultant's report, the best option to meet all of the objectives set from the future of transport consultation and is objectively, according to journey time modelling in Atkins' report, better than option A when it comes to traffic flow? We've definitely covered questions like that already. That's not a problem. Then we've got one from Christian Sullivan. Traffic engineers Atkins' analysis and BOATC's own acknowledgement in its feedback form that option A has serious weaknesses is no surprise to us. We have already had significant direct experience to show this from the pandemic trial of an option A type system. The pandemic trial showed, even with much less traffic during COVID, that channeling all of the town's north to south traffic along Mount Pleasant, New Road and Springfield on top of their existing two-way traffic load created huge negative impacts, particularly for pedestrians and cyclists. Post-pandemic, those facing increased risk from the massively heavier traffic would include hundreds of pupil pedestrians and family members who use these routes to walk to school. During the option A pandemic trial, people sent to BOATC videos and photos of traffic forcing its way along the northern loop extra mile and through their residential streets on every journey, including reports of damaged vehicles. I lost 2 mirrors to my own car, road rage and multiple other incidents. For any accident now occurring with an option A type scheme in place, there is a Dropbox full of examples to show this should have been entirely foreseeable. One has to ask why councillors would even consider an option A scheme when they are already on full notice from Atkins' analysis of the defects and with previous experience of the damages and risks. So again, I think we've covered option A and C. This one doesn't have a name, I don't think. The results of the survey of the 3 options for changing the direction of the traffic in Bradford on Avon says all of the options A, B and C have flaws. Will highways be prepared to reverse the option, if chosen, should it result in not improving the traffic problem, and how much would this cost? That's one part. Can the decision wait until the A36 is reopened again to see whether the traffic improves? And the last bit is, will the council look into a traffic light option on all roads leading into Bradford on Avon, operating only in peak hours when the centre of Bradford is gridlocked? So in terms of waiting until the A36 is reopened, I think we can all agree that this is an issue that isn't just affected by that. So, no, we don't necessarily need to wait for that to be finished. Will they reverse the option or think about changing it? I would certainly hope so. Whatever we implement, I would expect there to be ongoing monitoring of whatever scheme that is and ongoing discussions with highways engineers to make sure it's fulfilling all of our objectives. Oh, fine. That's fine. That was anonymous. Final one is from Charlie Mitchell. On the Town Council Traffic Consultation website, and more specifically the Bradford on Avon Traffic Study Modelling PDF, the Council states safety is the #1 priority on all routes, yet further in this PDF, under Section 3, detailed work to be undertaken, assuming by the contractor Atkins, who undertook the modelling survey, there is no mention of any risk assessments to be undertaken. Could the Council confirm if risk assessments have taken place for all proposed options by Atkins and also for the current system we have in place? How do all risk assessments compare in relation to the current system, i.e. how much is the risk increased by imposing any of the proposed options? Mitigating actions do not remove the risk. And the final bit, as safety is at the heart of everyone concerned regarding this matter, can I request that the risk assessments be made available alongside all information on the consultation website? Did Atkins do risk assessments in the thing? not full risk assessments, but there were some parts. I imagine that's going to be something that comes in the next stage of highways engineers to do full risk assessments of the specific option that they pursue. Is that all of those? Yeah, perfect. Okay, we can move on from questions and comments. Now I can ask, do any councillors have comments they would like to make at this stage as we move forward to make a motion? Tim.
Simon has said a few times that option C is not recommended by the report, but if you look on page 51 of the report at the very bottom, it says overall option C better fulfills the aims of the study and by extension the aims of the town council that emerge from the future of transport consultation. Accordingly, our recommendation would be that option C would be the most suitable scheme to progress to the next stages of scheme design, with the caveat that further work should focus on refining the design, which we know, and associated mitigation measures, which we've also spoken about. In addition to considering the array of deliverability risks within this report. So I guess that does refer to looking in more detail at the risks of any particular design.
Thank you. I'll go to Simon first because it relates to something he said, and then we'll go.
Exactly.
We've got Sarah, Kate, and Alex all with their hands up as well.
I think the problem with citing other parts of the same report are that those reports reflect the fact that they'd already discounted option A. And looking at the assessment of the options, option A is, I think, to my mind at least, clearly the one they favour. Now, whether we should favour it is another matter. But I have very little doubt that taking out of that bus consideration, which was completely spurious, and just looking at the three areas that we asked them to consider, that option A was the one that they preferred. So that's the first point. The second point is, and we will set as a council the task of coming up with a decision which would enjoy the support of most people. By no means all people, but a significant and demonstrable support throughout the town for it. I think the choice is therefore not between option A and option C, because I think if we do go for option C, and I was the first, I think, many weeks ago to point out that we're arguing about options where actually we need to move on from that. But whether we go for a one-way system which is more complete from the outset as opposed to this tiny step, which is effectively what's represented by option C, I don't see how we could really defend a decision that goes for that small step in the face of so much evidence, anecdotal and to a certain extent statistical, to show that a significant proportion of people in this town would prefer to go with something that they recognise, whether they call it the COVID system or the option A system. So for me, the choice is not between option A and option C. The choice for me is between option A or doing nothing. And if we do nothing, which some people might want to do, the figures that we've been citing throughout this evening and which are in the Atkins report suggest that there will be another 2,500 car journeys every day through this town over the coming years. And that is terrifying. So if we want to do nothing, that's fine. That's what we're going to be facing. But for me, I would rather get started on something in a controlled way, which we're going to be able to shape and progress according to our experiences, our thoughts, and the advice of experts in order to make a difference. Because I really fear that if we don't do something on this, this game is lost. And whatever we think we're doing now, by 2041, this town is going to be impossible. And if that means going with something like option A, for all its imperfections, well, I say let's get started and let's be very careful as we move forward with it.
Thank you, Simon. I'll go for Kate next and then Sarah.
just wanted to note the issue with the statement of it fulfils the aim of the study and therefore the aims of the town council, bearing in mind that our aims were to look at pedestrian safety, traffic volume and air quality, and the study seemed to predominantly look at journey times across the town, which was never a focus, and that if we increase journey times across the town, we will, in no doubt, pull in extra traffic because they see it as a better route through. So just to take issue with that point.
Thank you, Kate. Sarah.
I was just going to go back a little bit, and picking up on partly what Kate's saying is that all along, our priorities have been those three, aren't they? Air quality, volume and pedestrian safety. We've discussed the fact that traffic volume, to a certain extent, is something that is outside of the remit of what we're doing at this first, I think you called it the end of the first part, or something along those lines.
This is the end of the beginning.
End of the beginning, that was it. In that, traffic volume needs to be looked at in a way at a wider region, which for those of us who've been doing it for a while, and as the CURB report started to talk about, is something that needs to follow on. But if we don't make a start on the parts that we are able to do something about and for which we have engagement from Wiltshire Council, I think we would be failing in our attempts to improve what we can improve. One of the things that I always felt is a priority, and it's a priority which is the pedestrian safety, and it's a priority for the safety, literally, but also because of pedestrian intimidation, which reduces our footfall. It therefore affects local businesses. It affects the quality of life in our town. We have elderly or disabled residents who will not walk through the town because of this sense of intimidation, and we have people who won't come back to visit us for exactly the same reason. So there are lots of reasons why, for me, pedestrian safety is something that, even if we can't address the traffic volume and we're not sure about the air quality, we should at least start with that. That is a start. It's not, it's not a big step, but it's a start. I also think, thank you, Ivan. I also think that perhaps we could start with some of the things that, as a town, and certainly I would feel that, and I'll let my fellow councillors say whether they agree with me, there are certain things that I think we would probably all agree on. One of them is that 20 miles an hour throughout the town, and there is absolutely no reason why Wiltshire Council cannot apply this to an A road. All the other local authorities around us do. So I would fight for that there is no reason why we can't have 20 miles an hour throughout the town. So what I'm trying to say is that I don't think we need to be sitting here and saying we want option A, we want option C, we want the option is just a way of grouping together a series of measures. So let's look at some of the measures that we really care about. So 20 mile an hour through the town, that would be, for me, one of the big votes. The second would be that in order to widen the pavements at the bottom of Silver Street, we need a one-way in that area. Now, all of the options, that personally, I think that's absolutely imperative. That bottom part of Silver Street is terrifying. We have continuous accidents and people being clipped by wing mirrors. So this is mine, you can all disagree, but those are my first two. The third one is that at least alternate, but in my view probably one way, we also need a narrowing of the amount of space that the traffic takes at the top of Market Street. Because if anybody has ever tried to walk up to the top of Market Street, most of the time the traffic is on the pavement. And much as we've tried to put bollards in to mitigate it and all sorts of things, it just doesn't work. We actually need to stop there being two lines of traffic on that so that we have wider pavements at the top of Market Street. The other point that I think absolutely has to go in without fail is that any parts of the town that are affected by any scheme that we do and therefore experience extra traffic will need to have serious consultative mitigation measures placed in those areas. Now, whether those are extra pedestrian crossings to make sure that our children are safe, whether those are chicanes to slow the traffic down, I'm not a highways engineer and I wouldn't presume to decide them, but we need to make sure that that's clear. So I have those 4 points that I would say any scheme we want needs to include. And I do wonder whether there is an argument for the fact that I think Tim, this was your suggestion, or Katie, that we could try and see if we could persuade Wiltshire Council to do this as an experimental traffic order, whichever scheme, as a collection of ideas that we put through, so that we can go back to trialling this and then fiddle around with it so that it's not definitive. There's still scope, after we've put some of the measures in, to tweak it on the ground. That would be my first proposal. I'll leave it with anyone to shout me down.
Thank you, Sarah. Very useful, I think. Alex, and then Katie.
Thank you, Sarah. I couldn't agree more with you more, I should say. I think 20 miles an hour for the entire settlement area, and we would get rid of a load of street furniture that also impedes, like 30 miles, 20 mile signs that further impede you getting your pram round or your Zimmer frame or whatever your preference on that. The other thing is, I feel that perhaps our statement should be to maximise widening pavements. Rather than just say just those little bits, I would like to see that wherever we can, we maximise it. If they're going in and out, if you've got a pinch point on your pavement, you've still got a narrow pavement. I think we also would like to see, I would like to see that there's enforcement of those lower speed limits and for driving and parking on pavements. So if that means we need higher curbs or anything, these things are relatively low cost compared to bus gates, and they are things that we could put in place relatively soon. I would also suggest that we know from the previous system that wasn't a trial, and we're all saying that that's, that isn't, we're not talking about A's, B's or C's. What I would suggest is that there are some things before you put any kind of one-way or pavement widening in that you could already make mitigations in some of the areas, like better crossings and smiley faces or whatever a speed limit changes. So I think we could put stuff in before you put a one-way system in that already are in place to prevent the repeat of the problems that we had.
Thank you, Alex. Katie.
Thanks, Jack. So just firstly, just to clear up something that was mentioned by Ivan, A and C included a bus gate in the modelling, so the modelling was accurate across the different schemes that people have particularly talked about. I also think it's worth us remembering as we get into talking about the details of which bits of which roads we want to consider making one way. It often gets forgotten that, of course, even with the COVID scheme and with the schemes that we've considered in the modelling, that Mason's Lane, of course, remained two-way, as did all of New Road and Springfield and so on. So we're asked by Wiltshire to come up with a decision that has the overall support of the town, and there have rightly been questions about how we judge that. Well, certainly I think everyone here, above all else, we want to do the right thing. I don't think any of us feel we've been more lobbied by one point of view or another, or unfairly so. We've heard all sorts of different views, and now it's our responsibility to sort of work through that and do what we feel genuinely is the best thing for everybody, and I'm sure that's true for the whole council. They ask us to come up with something that has the overall support of the town, and I'm reaching that decision reflecting on a few years now of consultation, modelling, conversations with Wiltshire Council, experiences. And the one thing I'm confident of, as one or two others have said, is that there's definitely overall support for change. That's clear, and Tim and Sarah's work with Wiltshire Council's got us to the stage where they will consider something, having essentially walked away from Bradford after experiences in the past. So it's an opportunity we really, really can't give up at this point. And like Sarah, for me, a safer environment for pedestrians is absolutely critical. For the elderly, those with wheelchairs and pushchairs, I just never see a wheelchair really in our town centre, and that is discriminatory fundamentally. So we have to get those wider pavements and some one-way working. I certainly saw the benefits of option C, not least thinking of motorists from the point of view of the flexibility it offered, but I accept it hasn't received a response that could be described as overall support, insofar as we can tell from the engagement that we did. And I think, having lived through the experiences of previous traffic and pedestrian safety schemes, where there was a feeling that these were imposed and they were rejected. I think it's difficult, but I think, as others say, it's right not to talk in terms of those specific schemes, but putting in what we want from across the piece, as it were. I am really concerned about the amount of traffic levels that we will put very close to one of Wiltshire's largest primary schools, and that therefore it is, and we know that whether it's A or C or whatever form of one-way working, that does mean thousands more cars a day going around that loop close to where all those children are walking to school and attempting to cross the road. On top of that, the noise pollution, I am really mindful, was also a big issue. And so as we look at the mitigations, I don't know whether we can put them in ahead of a scheme being implemented, but they should be put there to be part of the scheme from the very start. So clearly safe crossing, measures to slow speeds, and to reduce noise. So that may mean a whole new road surface that is better at absorbing the sound for the benefit of those people who in their gardens, and I know from talking to people on doorsteps, you could not hear what other people were saying. So there's this sort of balance of views that have come through over a number of experiences over these years, and I think that's what we need to look at and build up, as Sarah and Alex and Simon have said, and I think there are possibilities beyond which we can consider at the moment. So what I'd like to see is us putting in something that is flexible. So the one bit of extra pavement at the bottom of Market Street is on that narrow gap where very few people walk because it's so dangerous anyway, and you can get round by going through the shambles. If we didn't put that in, then we leave open that flexibility to see how, if we were going down the route of one way all the way round, how that worked. And also it's an issue possibly if one road was closed for emergency vehicles or in the event of roadworks, that we keep flexibility in our system whilst widening the pavements, obviously, wherever we can without impacting future flexibility. Then I think when we write to Wiltshire, on top of a clear motion saying what we want, I think we should, obviously, as others have said, mention a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit across the town, which we have done numerous times before, but we may as well repeat it. I do think we need to keep up the pressure for the bus service, because I do not think it is fair to essentially remove a bus service from a section of town, albeit we don't control the bus service, but Wiltshire presumably can encourage bus companies to look at different routes so that that area remains served one way or another. And then I think also to look at the weight restriction on the bridge is something else we should mention. We obviously don't want to stop people getting their supermarket deliveries, but there might be a possible weight restriction that would reduce some of the volume of the lorries that come through.
Brilliant. Thank you, Katie. Alex, yes, go for it.
Just on the weight limit, it's currently 12 tonnes? 18, which is ridiculous. But we did discuss this with Wiltshire Council officers, and they said that they could look into whether that makes much difference as to how much traffic it would be compared to going to 7 tonnes or 12 tonnes. So we should push for that study to be done to see if it actually would make a meaningful difference. We did talk about that, and they said, well, would it make any difference? I said, I don't know, I'm not the traffic expert. So I think we should ask for that to be done anyway, because sometimes those vehicles are pretty big on the bridge.
I think the next classification down is 7.5 tonnes, so that's still a very sizable.
It's quite a big difference in 18.
Yeah, I think there's probably things like the weight limit on the bridge. I think there's certain things that we can put into a letter to Wiltshire Council and say on the side as well, please also look at this, because we can't just look at this in isolation. We need to look at other parts. Any further comments? Dave?
Just really a quick one. I'm kind of agreeing both with Sarah and Katie in terms of flexibility, and the ability to trial things is a great idea. What I don't want to lose sight of, and this may be unpopular, is I don't want to sort of put the one-way system at the back of all of that. I'd rather get on with that, as well as adding in flexible amendments to see how effective they are. But let's not forget, if we're saying one way, then let's keep it up front, please.
Thank you, Dave. One of the things I was just going to mention off the back of what Sarah said around experimental traffic orders is I know that Calne have recently had this imposed upon them using experimental traffic order, and that is something that can be made permanent, or the street can revert back to its previous design, I think is right in saying, isn't it? So,
done with no consultation whatsoever with the Calne residents, merely decided by the cabinet member.
We've had a lot more consultation here, that's for sure. So I think that's actually a really good point to make, is that, as I said earlier, I think whatever scheme goes in place needs to be monitored properly and assessed constantly to make sure that it's actually performing the functions we want it to perform. So maybe going in under that experimental traffic order is a really good way of actually making sure they do properly look at whether it's operating in the way we want it to operate. And I presume that also, I'm going to look at Sarah again, I presume that comes with a time frame on how long they leave it in for. I'm looking at Tim.
Tim's the expert on experimental traffic orders, I'm afraid.
Experimental traffic order can be up to 18 months.
Okay, so they come with a time limit, which is potentially useful in assessing them. Alex?
They need to be set up so that they can become permanent, otherwise you could fall awry and then they'll suddenly take it all out at great expense, even if you really want to keep it. So you need them to set it up with the right words in it so that we can continue it or adjust it accordingly.
Brilliant. Katie?
But are we saying then that we would have this, ask for this experimental traffic order on the basis that we would keep the wide pavements, so that we wouldn't just have a series of cones for ages, but we'd actually from the start implement the wider pavements, which we want as soon as possible, but then allow the flexibility as regards exactly how the traffic flows to be judged by the scheme?
Yeah, I would be very keen to get the pavements widened as soon as possible. That's sort of priority number one.
And the mitigations then obviously properly in place. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Any other comments from councillors at the moment? Yes, Sam.
Thanks, Jack. So I just want to make one important point before just giving my views on the traffic date. Now, the reason that we're having this debate now and that we've got this so far is thanks to the tireless efforts of my colleague here, Councillor Tim Trimble. He's got us further than I believe anyone has in recent times, and I do want to pay tribute to all the great work you've done on this, Tim. We'll come back to our three priorities, and we know, as we've clearly discussed tonight, that the first has been non-addressable, that what we'd really like to reduce traffic volume across the town. And unfortunately, as Sarah and others have pointed out, that's just simply not in our gift as much as we'd like it. Wiltshire Council will not countenance a solution which merely displaces traffic elsewhere. One thing that was mentioned tonight was this concept of a civilised and pleasant town that we live in, and we do. We are very lucky. And we know that this debate is divisive. And I think we can still draw on elements of consensus. There is actually a lot that probably almost all of us agree on, not least the 20 mile an hour. And I do also think it's incredibly important we do not forget a general consideration for our fellow citizens and understand that the very nature of change means that some people gain quite a bit, some people gain a little, and some people will lose out. And so if people are to lose out, we must be very sure that the gains justify those losses. So if we are taking this decision that may materially impact the quality of life of a significant number of residents, we are certain that it's worth it for the greater good, whatever exactly that is. Coming to the Atkins report. Today, I have heard somewhat selective drawing on the Atkins report. People rubbishing some parts of it and using others as justification for their argument. I think we need to be very careful about cherry picking. If we are convinced that overall the Atkins report is solid, it was undertaken by a highly reputable, probably the largest provider of traffic engineering solutions in the country, I think that we should respect overall the integrity of the report, even if we are more than entitled to disagree with elements of it. The Atkins report is emphatic that option A increases journey times across the town, and therefore it increases congestion. So that is true. I mean, Simon, you mentioned about, oh, it's because of the bus gate. Well, like we know, both option A and option C have the bus gate. And in any case, there is only one northbound D1 bus per hour. So I think the gentleman up there mentioned that we could somehow repeat the study without that. In an ideal situation, perhaps we could. We know we're not going to. But think about that. So we're only talking about one bus per hour. So I don't think the findings are going to be materially changed by the whatever one bus per hour would cause in terms of southbound traffic flow. The report does not directly consider the impact of mitigations that we know would have to happen on the north part of town. So we know that these would slow down things. It would create a more, a more difficult path, a slower path for traffic. So I do have to warn everyone that if you favour option A because you believe it improves traffic flow across the town, I believe you will be disappointed. And that obviously does not even come to the point about traffic, overall traffic volumes being much higher than they were during COVID. So we really focus on the one gain that we can get potentially out of any change, which is the pedestrian safety. And both option A and option C do deliver that. Let's be clear that option A involves sending thousands more cars every day around a residential area. You are effectively upgrading part of the town, part of the roads around the town to an A road. And therefore you have to consider the impact that that will have on people's quality of life there. I personally believe that if I were living in that part of the town, what would most worry with me would be the evenings, the nights, the quiet periods where my quiet road has a constant flow of traffic, like those of us who live on A roads already experience. And is there any way that we might be able to get around that? Because I personally don't think that's a very fair thing to do if there is an alternative. So there's talk today of some flexibility in a solution that we might provide. Is there a way that we might be able to come up with a scheme whereby, yes, north parts of the town end up having more cars, more traffic flow, but don't get this 24 hours a day? And I think flexibility, there is room for that. There are room for other considerations. For example, the fact that Mason's Lane could be two-way traffic for some of the day, well, probably off-peak hours, quiet times, when it's not a problem getting through our town. And then during busier times, for example, is there a possibility to make it one-way then? And then you don't have the congestion at that part of the day there. I'm not sure that any of that is possible, but I do believe that a flexible approach is the current way forward. I would still feel that we do need to base any final decision on expert advice and opinion. And therefore, again, before we rubbish reports, we have to be very, very sure that they're wrong, not just have a feeling. The experimental traffic order, I think, has a great merit in the sense that we can kind of test things out. Is it really what it says in the report? Option A, in many ways, is an extension of option C, because you've got, with both schemes, you've got one way on Silver Street. Option A is taking that a step further and increasing that to Market Street as well. So does it not make sense to start our experimental traffic order with option C, with the aim that if it does not show promising results, to move towards option A, a flexible approach which allows general trial and to really either prove or disprove what the Atkins report says. So I think very much we should focus on the points that we agree with and look very much to this flexible approach where we're not immediately excluding one, but trialing the option C first.
Thank you, Sam. Katie, you had your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to check, Sam, when you talked about Mason's Lane being sometimes one-way, sometimes two-way, did you mean Market Street? Because Mason's Lane is always two-way in both the COVID scheme and A and C because of access to Newtown and Belcombe.
Yeah, sorry, I think the point being that is there a scope that some of the roads do not necessarily need to be one-way all the time? Because there are schemes in the country where you see one-way part of the day and not necessarily all of the day.
Yeah.
And I think my priority in exploring something like that is thinking about residents who are going to face a lot of extra traffic during the day. That's easier to put up with than at night when it has such an impact on your quality of life.
Well, that was one thing I had wondered about. I don't know whether it's something highways would look at, is whether, for example, you could have, this would be a hybrid of A and C in a sense, a timed thing. It would need to have a monitor at the top of Mason's Lane and at, further down. For example, a timed period, it might be that 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Market Street would be one way, but outside those hours you could have the flexibility to allow two-way traffic. I don't know, I'm not putting that forward as a firm suggestion, but just something I'd be interested to know whether that might work.
Can I just, these are things we have never actually discussed before, and they certainly weren't modelled by Atkins. And I have to say, a timed one-way, two-way thing in our little roads is hugely confusing for motorists. And I think we could probably all agree that pedestrians aren't very bright, but motorists are always a lot dumber than when they're behind the wheel. And you know, if there's an option for it to be two-way from 9 o'clock or whatever, it really, we haven't discussed that. I'm not up for voting for
We're having
that.
the discussion
and then
now.
we've reverted back to A and C or whatever, and I thought we were moving away for the elements that we would be prepared to have consensus on. I've already said I really don't want to vote for something that has expensive and probably very confusing for these dumb motorists, because we're all dumb motorists when we're motorists, with bus gates in. So.
Thank you. Kate had a hand up, and then I'll come back to Tim with his hand up. I think that's Kate.
I very much support the idea of doing what we can to work where there is a consensus, 20 miles an hour. Trials are also very interesting. Trialling option C I thought was impossible because the one area where they said they couldn't trial was a bus gate. And also, that was just my point, because that's what I understood. And also the problem with having just partial two-way and one-way traffic is you can't suddenly roll back the pavements. If one of our main focuses is to get an increase in pedestrian safety and a widening of pavements, then that makes that very difficult.
Thank you. There was a hand up over, I think it was Tim, and then Sam.
Well, thank you, Sam, for your kind words, and I think you're absolutely spot on in your analysis. During COVID, the inhabitants of New Road and Springfield experienced an increased traffic flow past their front doors of around 5,000 vehicles a day. Now that's a lot of vehicles. That's a huge number. And if somebody invited me to comment on a traffic scheme that involved 5,000 extra vehicles past my front door, I would be somewhat less than delighted. So I can understand their concerns, and I also take on board this idea that if you go for option A, that is a 24-hour arrangement. And it's good to have some respite. What I would say is I think the necessity for a timed system is perhaps not really there. But I think with option C, it's kind of built into the system because it draws on something which Simon's very, very keen on, and that's congestion equilibrium theory. And what that says is people will take the quickest route they possibly can, and they learn by experience. So if they join a queue and it upsets their travel plans and it takes far too long, they will try to find another way. So if you think about it, if you were coming down the Bath Road in the afternoon, you would have the option of turning left onto Mount Pleasant going round New Road, fine, or you could go right and go down Mason's Lane. Now you're taking a calculated risk with that, but let's suppose that you decide to go down Mason's Lane. If you go down Mason's Lane, under these systems, the upcoming traffic would have priority. Now you might have to wait for some considerable time, even if the queue was very small, even if there were, maybe half a dozen cars or less at the top of Market Street, you would still have to wait. Now, you're only going to do that a few times, because if you can work out that actually it's quicker for you to go round New Road and down Springfield and then down Silver Street, because there is very little, in fact no, opposing traffic in Silver Street, you are very likely to quickly learn that that is a more efficient route. And that, in a nutshell, is congestion equilibrium theory, which is a favourite topic of traffic engineers from what I can gather. So, yeah, I think that would work, and it is an equitable solution for everyone. It doesn't cure the problem of extra traffic on New Road in Springfield, but it certainly reduces the overall numbers, and it mitigates it so that people out of peak hours are more likely to take the Mason's Lane route, because they know that there will be very little opposing traffic coming up the hill.
And of course, the Atkins modelling takes that into consideration. It absolutely does not take human behaviour into their modelling. It assumes that the increase in traffic carries and carries, and it goes through town or whatever thing. So that might work, Tim, but you can't suddenly invoke a different way that we're going to save the traffic, which isn't modelled, and also use the modelling that proves that that's how it's going to work. They don't. That modelling doesn't include that.
Yes, it does.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Just before I go to Dave, I've just been informed, if we want to go past 9:30, which I'm going to suggest we do, we need to actually vote to keep the meeting going, and I don't think we want to go home without a decision. So I'm very happy to propose that we keep the meeting going past 9:30. Simon's going to second it. All those in favour? Anybody against it? No. There we go. So we can carry on. Dave.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm sorry, I'm listening to Sam, and I have a great deal of respect for Sam, but this two-way moving traffic around town, I agree with Alex. I mean, it becomes incredibly confusing for everybody. It's the kind of problem which has happened with bus gates in other towns here. It's crazy to think that way. I think, we're building up here. I don't know what we're going to vote on, to be honest with you. We're building up a picture here of all sorts of fancy this and fancy that and all the rest of it, where we've had some very good suggestions regarding, actually temporarily possibly widening pavements and just experimenting around, but to keep a sensible route through town. Not you can't go this way now, but you can go through there tomorrow. It's bonkers. We can do lots of things with temporary sort of, I call them slaloms, but, chicanes and such like. Let's try and keep real. That's my view. And
Dave, I don't think we even need to make them temporary. We can make them permanent in certain places where they'd work for whatever. I'd say let's go for...
Thank you.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that's absolutely right. Trial it. We've always said that, Katie. Trial it. If it looks good, make it permanent. That's fine. But all this, that's high, you know, it's like Star Trek with all sorts of traffic going here, there and everywhere.
Brilliant, thank you.
Depending
Sarah.
on the
Sorry,
time.
Dave. Sarah.
Sorry, just one thought on what I don't know if this is what Katie meant, but the thing that came to mind when you said it is there's areas of Bath right in the centre where you can drive through after 6 o'clock, but you can't drive through earlier. Now, I have to say I am one of those people that fell foul of that system, so I paid the price for it. But I only fell foul of it once because it was expensive. So I don't know whether the thought, I'm just trying to make sure I've understood this, is that you cannot drive down at Market Street at all during peak hours, but perhaps at certain times after a certain time, you would be able to do so. I think that's, I'm happy to, I mean, what I'm saying is I don't think that's the end of the world as an idea, so long as at no point, whether day or night, do I think you could have two-way traffic, in my view, at the top of Market Street. Because if there's one thing, and this isn't just because you're my favourite councillor, Dave, honestly, I just think that if there are two things I would really like to achieve after nearly 10 years at this, is safer, wider pavements at the bottom of Silver Street. And I cannot walk away without that. Right, which means one way at the bottom of Silver Street. Also, personally, I could not vote for anything that did not give permanent, wider pavements at the top of Market Street. Those are the 2 points that, in my view, I just would not be able to vote for anything that did not include those two things, because the pedestrian safety at those 2 points is beyond anything that anyone should have to put up with. They are positively dangerous. So any scheme to me has to have those 2 points in them. If you then said after 9 o'clock at night, although you'd have to have alternate one way at the top of Market Street, you could actually drive down Mason's Lane, wait, oncoming traffic, whatever, and then drive through. I'm not adverse, personally, it doesn't bother me if that happens, because I can see that would help people on New Road not having constant streams of traffic late at night. So I can see that working. It's just so long as my red line is those 2 bits of the system. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Sarah. I can see Jenny had her hand up, and then we'll come to Sam afterwards.
Just something very quickly. I live on the south of Bradford on Avon, and the area that I live, there are a lot of people who would never get involved in all this. They would never come to these meetings. They would never send in what they want or don't want, because they don't feel listened to and that they're not bright enough, and people will laugh at them. And I know this for a fact, and I've worked with it all my life with people like this. And yet there are people in this town who have never, in the last 5 years, gone into Bradford, into town, because they can't get there. They can't get over the bridge, the one that's just been redone, because their motorised vehicles, mobility scooters, are too big. So you have to go on the road, and that's really, really dangerous. I have walked downtown, well, not walked, driven lately, downtown so many times and found elderly people, really frail elderly people, on the road trying to argue with the cars because they can't stay on the bus. So many people in that area of town do not even go to town. Some of them haven't seen town for about 5 years. And I think we need to think about them as well.
Cheers, Jenny. Thank you. Sam, I'll take your comment, and then I think we probably ought to start hurtling towards crafting a motion here on what we've got, and we can work through it. Sam?
Yeah, so I was actually just going to suggest really that, Jack, that actually there is a great amount of consensus here despite initial appearances, and whether we could start looking at all the aspects which we think we have, we shared support for, and then perhaps there will be 1 or 2 crunch bits at the end where we decide where we want to go. But If we
No,
could
that
type.
sounds
And it sounds
sensible.
like, I mean, Sarah summarised that very well in terms of, looks like we completely see the case for one way on Silver Street. And yeah, I think it should be noted that, as far as I'm aware, the statistics show that actually there are far more accidents reported on Silver Street than Market Street or other areas. So that seems to be a clear starting place.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, so I have been taking notes as we've gone through it, or tried to. So what I'm happy to do is, if I read through some of the areas I think there's an agreement for a motion, don't put your hands up, just feel free to talk to me as we go, and we'll try and work it out as we go through. So what I've jotted down, I've got Bradford and Avon Town Council recommends Wiltshire Council to design a scheme. Now, I've put on an experimental traffic order, but do we broadly feel like that is where we're starting on this?
I mean, I don't know, we'll have to discuss with
A lot of this is really difficult because I really want to be specific, but I agree with you that we're going to have discussions with Wiltshire Council anyway.
Can you say, as Alex pointed out, an experimental traffic order with the intention to be made permanent, or the ability to be made permanent? I think that's the word.
Ability, yeah.
Yeah, the ability to be made permanent. Does that work? Because otherwise, we do... Yeah. Yeah. The point I'm making is we do not want to fall foul of the problem that we had with the COVID system, which was that there was no option even to discuss it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I would consider leaving the experimental traffic order possibly to sort of after the motion to say, or as part of the motion, but not as part of what we want to do, in that if we put it right there at the front and they say, oh no, we've told you you can't have an experimental traffic order, then are we throwing out everything?
So maybe you're thinking take it out at the start and then have that in separately.
I don't think that should be a problem. It depends what the rest of the motion is going to say, I suppose, in part.
Yeah, fine.
Oh, well, I think it's going to include maximise widening of pavements with specific reference to the two seriously points. So I think that should be the next point.
Shall I go through? I've got a list. Let me go through the list and then
Yes.
we'll go around.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. They're on there. Don't worry. Blah, blah, blah. So, BOA Town Council recommends Wiltshire Council to design a scheme on an experimental traffic order with the ability to be made permanent, and then I've put assessed depending on the criteria from our priorities, which incorporates, or which has, 20-mile-an-hour speed limits throughout the town, wider pavements being prioritised and maximised throughout the scheme, particularly at the bottom of Silver Street and at the top of Market Street, one-way traffic east to west on Silver Street, two-way traffic on Mason's Lane, serious consultative mitigation measures put in place from the start in any areas negatively impacted, transparent consultation with emergency services, local bus services and local schools on the impacts of any scheme. And then I've thrown in, although it's a bit vague, we need to talk about the ability for the scheme to be resilient. So I put that down when we were talking about the fact that accidents happen, we need to make sure the scheme can cope with those in some way. I'm sure some of that will come out in the sort of serious design phase of it. What are people's thoughts on adding to that, taking away from that, tweaking that? I'm very happy to hear comments.
I think that's a very good core to start with.
Lovely.
You mentioned Silver Street, you mentioned Mason's Lane. What happened to Market Street?
He mentioned Market Street.
Oh,
Top
did
of,
he?
Silver
The
Street
widening
and
at the top.
and the top of Market Street.
Okay.
That's where, so at the moment, I've got wider pavements being prioritised and maximised throughout the scheme. So that, I think that's a broad agreement for everybody. Wherever they can, we want them to make the pavements as wide as possible.
Including out Jenny's way, frankly, if that needs.
Sorry?
Including out where you were talking about, Jenny.
I think it needs to be
Yeah. So if we say, as a town, we want to, but specifically on the 2 points that we're focusing on.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we need to look at as well is generally outside of the motion when we're talking to Wiltshire, and I can put this in a letter, is that we do want to look more widely at the whole town when we're doing this anyway, because whatever we put in place is going to have impacts on Bath Road, Trowbridge Road, Froome Road, so they need to look at that. So yeah, I've got wider pavements being prioritised and maximised throughout the scheme, particularly at the bottom of Silver Street and the top of Market Street, which is what we said earlier. So that's what I've got as our broad areas of agreement. What we haven't, I suppose, solved is about the one-way, two-way and potential timings of anything on Market Street.
In my feeling is that that widening of pavement at the top of Silver Street and on Silver Street and the top of Market Street requires one-way working at those points.
So one way through, I'll call it the tight bit at the top of Market Street.
In order
the yellow box.
Yeah, with I can't remember what you said, a particular reference to wider pavement on Silver Street and the top of Market Street, which therefore require one-way working at these 2 points.
Could I ask, does that mean one-way working or shuttle working? So potentially that you couldn't get 2 cars through at the same time, but you're not necessarily committing to a one-way on Market Street.
Oh, I see what you mean. So like we have on Froome Road?
Correct, yeah.
Shuttle working. Okay.
I'm not excluding one-way, but it's not going to be a fixed, non-movable thing.
One lane of traffic work.
Yeah, it's one lane shuttle working, whatever the shuttle working, yeah.
At least. But I don't know, this is getting further and further from where we thought we were going. But
You know, we've kind of got that at the moment at the top of Market Street.
Sorry, Dave.
We've got this. If you took the yellow box, got rid of it, and widened the pavement there, you can compare it to how things are with the yellow box there at the moment. And trust me, if you want to see aggression, watch it through that gap. And that's what you're going to get.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Right, okay, so we have the broad basis of the centre. We need to come to some agreement on the edge. So,
can I just
Sarah,
make
yes.
one other point? As a resident who lives on the shuttle system that's been mentioned on Froome Road, if you want to see more aggression, Dave, come and join me at rush hour. They don't just drive on the pavements, they drive through other people's cars. None of those residents have wing mirrors anymore. Yeah, whether they fold in or not, you've lost them if you live on Froome Road. So my worry with the shuttle system is that because people know that you can get through sometimes, they get really angry. They may not be very bright when they're driving, but God, are they angry. And I'm not sure that, this is going to work. I'm really worried about the shuttle working at the top, just because having lived with it at the bottom. Now, one of the issues with the one on the Froome Road is that there is no priority. Right? So everybody thinks they have right of way all the time. Now, if that shuttle working had a priority, that would make a difference. So if there was always priority up, that would make a difference. But I would defer to others because I am worried about it.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Alex and then Sam.
Can we just leave it with one way, but we can discuss with Wiltshire Council? Because I think that if we're getting that specific, we are becoming those very traffic engineers that we are not. But we are, from our own witnessing, wanting to keep this as simple as possible at this stage. Us being too prescriptive of what's going in without having those initial discussions with Wiltshire, I think is probably wasting good TV watching time or something. No, I'm joking.
Yes.
But you know what I mean. I think that if we get too specific about whether it's shunting or what do you call it, shindigging, whatever, if we're getting too specific about that, we're going down a rat hole that might not work, and we see it in places where it clearly doesn't. And I think we should not go there.
No, we need to walk the line between specificity, which we do need, but obviously making sure we leave ourselves open to discussions with Wiltshire. Sam and then Katie.
Yeah, well, I do think then you have to be genuine with people that you're going for option A. There's no point in trying to tell people that this is some kind of hybrid. That is option A if you have that one way there. Yes, it is, Simon. It is. It's one way on Market Street. So I'm not saying, categorically can't do that, but I think we have to be very upfront with people. We can't sort of do smoke and mirrors and somehow persuade them that we've pleased everyone here. The priority working, it does work very successfully, and anybody who knows Bristol will know Royal Hill, where under the old viaduct there, you have priority for southbound traffic. I've not seen any frustration there because it's very clear, unlike on the Froome Road. So I do see that could work. But as I said, that for me, there is so much we can agree on, but I'm still not persuaded that a full one-way system on Market Street is the fair way forward for this town, and that there may be better alternatives to avoid, really seriously negatively impacting the quality of life for a significant number of people. So I'm not prepared at this stage to support a full one-way on that part of the work.
I'll come to Katie in a sec. Sorry, I just want to pick up on what Sam has said, which is a really good point, as it got me thinking. So, broadly speaking, personally, I veer towards perhaps a full one-way system may be slightly better. However, I agree with you that I think if we have shuttle working there, the ability to make that one-way is easier than taking it out. And also, we need to make sure that we've said in the motion, what we're going to say in the motion is that any scheme is continually monitored and assessed. So if we put in priority shuttle working there, and it isn't working, it isn't producing for us and our aims, it would be easier, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a highways engineer, it would be easier to then make that one way than it would to put in one way and then whip it out for priority working. So although I'm minded to actually think that perhaps one way is better, I'm willing to not take that risk, if that makes sense, I think. That's where I am. Katie?
Well, my understanding is that you can widen the pavement, which we all agree is imperative at the top of Market Street, with either the shuttle working scheme, priority working, which is basically C, or with one way, which is A. So you can widen it with either. So you can put that wider pavement in there, permanently, whichever. I do think that, as Sam says, we need to be transparent with people, and we also need to be clear in what we're saying to Wiltshire Council. So to kind of leave it vague as regards what we want there, I'm not sure will work. I worry that Wiltshire will say, oh, you haven't made up your minds. And so I do think we have to make a decision one way or the other. It's a really difficult decision, except that if we stick with widening the pavements at the top of Market Street and on Silver Street and don't do the little bit at the bottom of Market Street, we do allow that flexibility if after a trial of one or the other, we want to go for the other options. So to my mind, I think we need a bit more clarity than seems to be being suggested.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think it is important to be as clear as we can be. Tim?
I essentially agree with what Sam has said again, and also Katie. The other thing that we should be thinking about, and really we shouldn't have to be thinking about this. This should be Wiltshire Council Highways, is the resilience within the system. The more one-way stretches you have, where you've widened pavements so that only one stream of vehicle can actually move through at any given time, makes it much more or much less resilient if there's an emergency or for whatever, or there's roadworks are the other one that come up quite a lot. So to my mind, you're far better off starting with widening the pavements top of Market Street and Silver Street, having shuttle working at the top of Market Street and still allowing two-way at the bottom. Because if option C doesn't work, then you can always add in that short section of pavement, which is only about 30 or 40 metres. And the other thing to think about is, what is really the value of that pavement? The pavement between the Swan and the Cobfar estate agents.
It's the only way you can look in the Cobfar windows.
Right. Okay.
Out by a bus.
Well, that is a slightly niche requirement. I'm not saying we should take it out.
Well, I tell you,
I'm
if you're
not sure.
standing there, you want to have that bit of paper.
No, I'm not saying we should get rid of it, Alex. All I'm saying is, if you widen it, how many people are actually going to use it? No. Because if you think about it, if you... I'm not saying we shouldn't widen the pavements in as many areas as we can, but
Okay. Let's not get drawn into a back and forth, or we're starting to go round in circles.
But what I'm saying is, if you walk down that pavement and you look in Cobb Far and then you go round the front, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
Can you walk up Silver Street? Well, certainly you can't do that very easily at the moment. So unless you walk back up, which not many people do, they walk down there and then they cross towards Christine's supermarket, and that in itself is a hazardous place to cross.
No,
so,
Tim,
okay.
Crossings are quite an important thing for us to consider here, because the top of Market Street as it stands is a very, very dangerous place to cross. And I actually devised routes to visit people in Newtown and things by not going up there. So I think it is a really important place that maybe we would be able to, whether it's shuttle or not shuttle, that you actually have a pedestrian priority to go over at the top there. That would be something would be pretty useful. And some other places in the middle of town. So having other crossing points also calms traffic and makes it safer for pedestrians. And we haven't talked about that really before.
No, I think that's a good point. And I think I'm comfortable with that coming under sort of mitigations in a way. I know we've probably in our heads got the idea of it being New Road Springfield, but I think that can include that. Okay, Dave, and then I'm going to try and draw us through a bit
Tim,
more.
my apologies. I thought you were talking about a different piece of pavement. I agree with you entirely that that piece of pavement down there is dangerous. Cobb Far will have to lose out, I'm afraid, because I think that should just be cleared.
Okay.
Well, you say that, I mean, hardly anyone uses it. And again, it's dangerous. If an elderly person in particular were to fall, you know, and trip there, they'd be under car wheels. It's as simple as that. I mean, the point is, if you get to that particularly small piece of pavement, you only have to go through the shambles and across the zebra crossing.
Yeah, I think we're getting a bit too specific. So
Right.
I'm conscious that we're going around a little bit, and I'm also conscious that we're getting into being highway engineers sat here, and we are not highway engineers, otherwise we'd have solved this years ago. So, I've got the bare bones of what we agreed, what we discussed a minute ago, that I think we all have broad agreement on. As far as I can see it, and I don't want to oversimplify it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the areas of disagreement at the moment are to whether to have full one way through the tight bit at the top of Market Street with the yellow box, or to have priority shuttle working. Now, they're two very different things, so I think we have to be clear when we put the motion forward to Wiltshire Council which one we prefer. I'm happy to lay my cards on the table and say that at the moment, I'd be more comfortable going for the priority shuttle working, because if we did find that it isn't working and we wanted to go to one way, we can. If we put the one-way system in and it doesn't work, we've kind of cooked the goose, haven't we? We're there with our nice big wide pavements, which I really want, but we have no...
Sorry,
go on.
That's terrible of me just to shout no.
No,
It's terribly rude.
It's like you've been in the House of Commons too much, Sarah.
Sorry, I'll stop bobbing in a minute. Either way, if we are widening the pavement at the top of Market Street, whether it's for shuttle working or whether it's for one way, the physical obstacles on the ground surely are the same, or have I misunderstood? In which case,
Actually,
in a
you're probably
way,
right.
I don't think from reversing it, if it's an experimental order, in a way, we can either go for an experimental order which is one way, either you can only go up at that point all the time, or we can go for an experimental order where you've got shuttle working at the top. The physicality on the ground is reversible. Whether you start with one or start with the other, unless I've misunderstood something.
So you're thinking that the sort of physical street furniture, the pavement,
Yeah, the pavement
would
is
look the same for both?
Yeah, the road
Yeah.
markings,
Yeah.
the paint might be different, but the pavement I would
The
have
curb.
thought would be the same.
Yeah, no, that's
so
right.
I would have thought but I do think we need to make that decision, because either we are talking about a system where, on the whole, people can, if they wish, and it would be slow, drive down Market Street, drive down Mason Lines, drive down Market Street and get out the bottom at Nees Corner, whatever that roundabout is now called, or not. Now, if we are allowing that, driving down, we are mitigating the amount of impact for the people on New Road in Springfield, which is a good thing, but we're also, at the same time, we have to be aware of the fact that some of the advantages at that bottom corner, which we remember when we had the social distancing, which is that that corner can be built out, and therefore...
Which corner, sorry?
The bottom, where the little mini roundabout
Yep.
is. If there is no chance of anyone coming down and therefore going around a roundabout, you can remove a roundabout, which we did during the social distancing, which allows much safer crossing from the downstream side of the river across onto, sorry, I don't know of any other name for it except Knees Corner. Right? That makes it much easier. If you are still allowing traffic to come down Market Street, you've then still got to have the roundabout because you've got a junction, in which case you can't build out that pavement. Sorry, I'm getting into the engineers bit, but do you see what I'm getting at? We do. I think we have to make a decision about which one we're going for, at least in our first stage experimental order, because otherwise we are going back to Wiltshire Council effectively saying, well, we want A or C, and I don't think we can do that.
No, I completely agree that we have to make a decision. Alex? Oh, yeah, you need your mic for the stream, Alex, I'm afraid. If anybody's
I would err towards the simpler option with respect to, and which might not be popular with some of the more vocal people here, but that you would start with the one-way system. And you would have that street furniture, you would see how it goes. But having the extra complexity for pedestrians at the bottom, having the extra complexity for pedestrians at the top, I feel that you will have reneged on the best opportunity for the centre of town pedestrian safety. I do appreciate those other things. We should put the mitigations in all the way round if we can get the slower traffic, and the enforcement is even more important because, frankly, you're not allowed to drive on the pavement, but who's ever been fined from doing that in Bradford? So I would put that would be my starting point, but with the possibility that we change it as we move forward.
Yeah, I think that whatever we put forward, there's always a possibility that certain things can change if the street, we're calling it street furniture, if the street furniture hasn't altered it dramatically. Katie and then Tim.
Well, I was just going to say that if we went for that suggestion of Alex's, we wouldn't be able, I would suggest, if it's a trial, as I would hope anything would be, whether it's a formal trial or just the possibility that things could change, we can't put in the pavements at the bottom, but in a sense we'd be starting with a mix, wouldn't we? But it would be clarity as regards the traffic. It would be a mix in terms of what's on the, or it would be one thing on the ground, but in terms of the traffic, it would be, so, if we went down that route of Alex's, I would say we shouldn't put the pavements in that would stop it reverting to C in effect if it was shown not to work.
Fine. Tim.
With regard to an experimental traffic order, the big advantage of that is it allows you, and the big advantage with it, especially if you've got those mitigations in, is to see how the system actually performs, you know, in real life, and not just in a model. Now, we've mentioned several times that a lot of people have said, oh, well, you know, on these responses, a lot of people say, oh, well, let's just bring back the COVID one-way system because that worked, right? Now, I perfectly understand that logic. You know, they've seen something that works for 80 or 90% of them, and they can save a bit of time. But what I would say is it might be better to start with the shuttle system and not widen the pavement at the bottom of Market Street, because it does get relatively little use and it's quite easy to go through the shambles. But the advantage of doing that is you've then got a comparison between what has been suggested, and people will be able to look at it and say, yes, it's worked, or no, it hasn't. And you've actually got the evidence in front of your very eyes. Now, if it fails, it's very easy to convert that system to the full one way. Because the only real difference is that you add in a wider pavement at the bottom of Market Street. And that's the only difference.
Yeah. So if we excuse, okay. Alex, you had your hand up.
I don't give a damn about it. Use your microphone, please, Councillor Kay.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I don't really care about that pavement at the bottom. I don't think any of us really care about that little specific bit of pavement because we all know it's too scary to use, really. So let's not even care whether we do that before or after. I just feel that the one-way system is the simpler thing to ask for at the outset and see how it works and then change it later, because we say it can go either way. I don't see why. I mean, Tim's arguing one way, I'm arguing that. It's just which one do we try first? And I would say that the one-way system doesn't create more. It creates less pinch points, as several of our members in the audience have mentioned, and it's simpler for pedestrians and motorists to understand. If we find it does not work, and we might find that quite quickly, and obviously there's always traffic jam, there's always traffic diversions from all the rest of the places, so it's never actually constant. We can change it. That's what we're asking for. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not arguing for the...
So the way I see it is that we're in agreement on everything else. The eye that, yeah, that. So I think we're all in agreement that actually it would be beneficial to have some system at that pinch point that's either priority working or one way, that gives us the ability to then revert to the other if that system doesn't work. Sarah.
Having come to this debate completely open-minded about what we're going to do, the point that Tim's just made, which is that although it was imperfect, we have actually lived through a approximation of the complete one-way system.
It's the third comparison point.
Yeah. Is the comparison point of having the shuttle working on a temporary basis useful? Because it would give us the idea that we'd lived through the other alternative, because at the moment we've narrowed it down to those two alternatives. I don't know, I'm still kind of slightly undecided.
Fine. Well, on that thing of being undecided, at the moment, the only way I can see that we get through this is to literally just have a vote on which one. I'd rather avoid that, but we may have to go down that route. Katie.
I'm struggling with it. It's very difficult. The thing I do see, though, is that the one thing that we have specifically and directly consulted on was C, and that did not receive a strong level of support. And that concerns me as regards starting with that, albeit that I saw the strengths of that and want to keep the flexibility, because in many ways I can't see that A will work particularly well, because I think we don't have to wait till 2041. I think it will be much sooner. We will see a heavy build-up of traffic. So I think that will make it, impossible to operate all around that northern loop. But yeah, maybe you're right. We just go for a vote, but give us a moment to think.
Yeah, I think. Well, this is what I'm thinking. So I don't know how the procedure works, but I think we're broadly agreed on 95% of it. But I suppose we have to take two slightly different motions. Sorry, Ian.
Well, you can't just vote on which piece you want to put in there. So just vote on one, shall we?
That bit. Yeah, fine. So yeah, we could vote on that small part and then take the rest of it as it comes. Simon.
That may actually be part of it. I think it's very important that we as a council, whatever our individual feelings are about things, vote as unanimously as we feel we can. And I think we need to think about that before we divide into two motions. We have a different way of starting, and it is only that. Do we start, if we go down that route, Sam, then we can certainly experiment with that. My concern about that route, and I will have this minuted in there, is that it will not meet the expectations of enough people in this town to pass Wiltshire Council's threshold. That is a real case. I live in Bath Road. okay? How I'm going to be affected by either of these decisions, I don't know, okay? I'm just pointing out the practicalities of it. So whatever we come up with, I think it's important that we as a council are apparently unified and we find a way forward. I can see value in both ways doing it. My concern, as I expressed just now, is that if we don't go far enough, it's going to look as if we are not listening to what I believe are the larger proportion of this town's wishes. And if that's the case, please, if that's the case, then Wiltshire Council, will they use that as a pretext for once again condemning this town to inactivity when it comes to our traffic? Now, I don't know the answer to that either, so that's my concern.
So, sorry, just on that point, Simon, if I quote directly from the letter that we got back from two Wiltshire Council Cabinet members, which is, we will reiterate that all three options, so it's A, B and C from the report, go some way to achieving the goals set by the Town Council. We are content to move forward with any option the Town Council favours, and we'll be willing to consider other options if required. So they're sort of open to whatever we put forward in a way. They do then, in the next sentence, say, clearly the key factor is that the Town Council needs to demonstrate an overall level of support at a local level before any further work can be undertaken. So it needs the local level of overall support, but then equally, they haven't helped us here, have they? Equally, they said that they're willing to consider any and all options. So once again, the Highways Authority have devolved all responsibility, but that's another argument.
It was never, if I may just sort of follow up then.
Yeah, go on, follow up, and then Tim,
okay.
Yeah.
A way round it tonight might be for us to say that we want to see the pavement widened at the top of Market Street, which I think is what you said and what others have said and what we all want to see. And that we ourselves, because let's face it, we aren't the engineers, do not decide which way that should go in the first instance. And it may well be that some clever person at Atkins will say, well, if you're going to do that, then the right order to trial these things is this way. And they might turn around and say the right way of doing things is to do it the other way, and we will just have to live with that. But I do think that that is probably where I would say we as a council can be united, give a united argument, address the issues that Sarah and others have, which is about widening pavements now, and let's talk to the engineers about which way should we go forward.
Okay.
I really think it's important that whatever we put forward as a motion is voted on by everyone. I think Simon's absolutely right. What we do not want is for Wiltshire Council to say, yes, but you can't agree amongst yourselves. How would you expect it to go forward? Because they would just love to be able to go back to saying that we're the town that likes to disagree.
We agreed on so many issues, and it's that we want to be flexible, which is actually making it more difficult. And it's that starting point. But I think Simon's absolutely right. We can say that we defer to your traffic modelling, traffic engineers for the best way to test.
Well, the thing I said right at the beginning was at least alternate one-way working at the top of Market Street with priority northbound.
So off the back of what we've been discussing, sorry, Katie, go now because I'm going to draw it up. Go.
I can see the benefits of what Simon's suggesting in that it brings us together, and hopefully that we could all vote for that. But I do, my worry comes back to the point of what are we conveying clearly to the town in the shambles tomorrow? What will people be saying? Oh, what did the town council vote for? And it's not clear, and we need to be clear with Wiltshire. So I think the message, we have to be very clear then that we're saying we want a trial and you to decide the order in which you trial, but then I think people's expectation would be that both would be trialled, and I don't know whether we can get that out of Wiltshire. If they trial one that suits them best, and as far as they're concerned it works, are we going to be able to go back to them and say, now we want you to trial another? We'll be pushing our luck, I think. That's what worries me.
I think the thing, if I may just answer again,
yeah, Simon, go then.
Is that the important thing is that when you're talking in the shambles tomorrow, you say council decided, because at this moment in time, the more we get into the minutiae, council isn't agreeing on it. What we'll have to ask what the designers are going to come up with, and we'll talk to it before they actually implement it and find out why they're preferring one solution over another. But at the end of the day, they are the experts.
I'd rather they So go on, Tim.
I absolutely agree with Simon. That is the way to go, because we have been placed in an invidious position here, because really these things are the responsibility of engineers, and we need to rely on them for their expertise to advise us as to what is the best way to go. We should not be in this position. We are not the Highways Authority. We need to consult with them and ask them what the best way to go is. And we need to have their views on whether, you know, an experimental traffic order is the way to go, and if so, you know, exactly what the parameters and what order we do things. But you know, we also have to make them aware of what the human impact is on these things as well. So I think that's the way to go. It's something we can agree on. I think otherwise, you know, we'll be here all night and we won't agree. And that is not an acceptable. We've got to a position where we potentially could see some real action after decades. And so now we need to just go with a sensible approach back to them. If they throw it back to us, well, then we have to come back again.
So we don't want to let the good be the enemy of the perfect, or vice versa. What's the phrase?
Will you just add that we are all against the option of a bus gate in any other circumstances as one more thing that we agree on? Do we? Oh, maybe we don't.
I don't absolutely agree with that.
I think it's not in there at the moment. I'm happy to leave.
But that's not what they're asking for.
No, I'm happy to leave that out for now.
That does not need to be addressed.
That's fine. So what I've just written down, and I'm happy to take comments on the language around this, because we've just discussed it for the last 5 minutes. Now, my concern is that it is slightly, wishy-washy is the only phrase I can think of, so I'd welcome any tightening on language. We are open to exploring both one-way and priority shuttle working at the top of Market Street, and would welcome input from expert Wiltshire Council highway engineers as to which system would be most beneficial to put in place at this point. No? Sorry, have I completely... Sorry.
Where did that bit come from?
That was where we were talking... Sorry, have I completely got the wrong end of the stick then? You need your mic on, sorry.
Sorry, the motion that we had, which is that we would like an experimental traffic order with, I forgot what the word was.
Yep.
Yeah, the need for mitigation on parts of the town that will experience extra traffic to be put in first. That we want wider pavements that will require one way on Silver Street in the southbound, and that on the top of Market Street we want at least alternate one-way working with priority to the north. Then the only point that was open for discussion is, under the experimental traffic order, the decision as to whether the one-way working at the top of Market Street should be trialled in one direction or as both is the only part that's open to discussion, isn't it, for them to look at?
That's what I've got all of that before it.
Oh, right, sorry.
I'm not saying that's the motion.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean
to.
I've got all of the... I didn't want to read it all out. I've got all the stuff beforehand.
Sorry.
Shall I read it out? Go, Kate, and shall I read it out in full?
Just to be devil's advocate, what happens if they then come back to us and say, well, you've got to decide? That's the question.
We will have to have these discussions. How much
does that, you know, where does that take us in the process?
We'll come back and have this conversation again.
We'll have to.
All these people have to spend...
We'll have to. Right, so what I have written down, the full thing, and again, jump in, but we'll go... Bradford and Avon Town Council recommends Wiltshire Council to design a scheme or an experimental traffic order with the ability to be made permanent, and which will be assessed continually against our top priority of pedestrian safety, which has 20-mile-an-hour speed limits throughout the town, wider pavements being prioritised and maximised throughout the scheme, particularly at the bottom of Silver Street and at the top of Market Street, one-way traffic east to west on Silver Street, two-way traffic on Mason's Lane, serious consultative mitigation measures put in place from trial first. My only worry is what we said earlier about, would they be willing to trial both? We don't know, but I think we have to have that conversation with them. So if we changed it from, we are open to exploring both one-way and priority shuttle working at the top of Market Street and would welcome input from expert Wiltshire Council highway engineers as to which system it would be most beneficial to put in place first on a trial basis at this point. Okay, Katie.
Is that, to say the words trial first, it suggests that we're expecting them to trial 2 options. That would be great, but is that more of a disincentive to them to continue talking to us? Similarly, much as I want 20 miles an hour across the town, and I think we're right to include it in our requests, is that something else, because they've said no to us so many times on that, that will make them turn away?
I think I see this as not a starting point, but the latest in a very long series of negotiations. And I think if we put things like 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in there, it lays our stall out. And okay, they may turn around to them and say, no chance, but we've got to keep making that case.
I absolutely
agree.
Yeah. I think...
Can I just say on the trial first, when we talked to Wiltshire Council, when we were all together, they said we can trial things, but not the bus gates because they're too expensive. So trialling by having wider pavement here or a two-way bit, one way, they agreed when we talked to them that we could trial it. So we're now saying, yeah, we've come back, we'd like to trial that. Which one do you think would be the most efficacious in making a decision of how it suits the town, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Did you hear that?
Thank you. Do we have any further comments on this at the moment? Or if not, I'm happy to have a proposal on it, or I'm also willing to read it out one more time as it's so important.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
I'll read it one more time. Okay. Is that what the please was for? Or was that, yeah, fine. Or is it please? Please stop. Bradford and Avon Town Council recommends Wiltshire Council to design a scheme on experimental traffic order with the ability to be made permanent, which will be assessed continually against our top priority of pedestrian safety, which has 20-mile-an-hour speed limits throughout the town, wider pavements being prioritised and maximised throughout the scheme, particularly at the bottom of Silver Street and the top of Market Street, one-way traffic east to west on Silver Street, two-way traffic on Mason's Lane, serious consultative mitigation measures put in place from the start. Mitigation. I've got mitigation. Sorry, it's just serious consultative mitigation measures put in place from the start in any areas negatively impacted. Transparent consultation with emergency services, local bus services and local schools on the impacts of any scheme. We are open to exploring both one-way and priority shuttle working at the top of Market Street and would welcome input from expert Wiltshire Council highway engineers as to which system it would be most beneficial to put in place first on a trial basis. The last thing I wanted to say around that, no, it's not in the motion, is that when I presume it would be me emailing as the mayor, I put this forward. I'm also very happy to put in there that we really welcome the opportunity to work with Wiltshire Council, to use our local expertise and to make sure that we can help shape this process, because we are entering the middle phase of discussions and negotiations, and I also want to get some timelines out of them. So I'm happy to put that in. Katie, I will take...
Sorry. Are we asking for actually the work, design of something that will be put in properly, the wider pavements where we can and where we've identified them? We don't want trials going on for ages with loads of cones. And, if we're going to have proper mitigations, proper crossing, and... chicanes or new road surface and so on and so forth, that's to trial these things properly and make the mitigations work. We're asking for them to be put in properly, presumably.
None of the things that you've mentioned would change regardless of whether it was one way on Market Street or shuttle on Market Street. The better road surface on the new road Springfield bit, the mitigations for speed, the crossings are all required regardless. The only bit, as you mentioned earlier, that you wouldn't do straight up in terms of pavement widening is the widening in front of the nursery.
Yeah, so we can be clear.
Pull out because you still might want to have vehicles coming down Market Street at some point, and you might not do that.
Yeah.
That's the only bit of pavement that you wouldn't do straight away probably, but everything else can be done permanently.
Great, so we can be clear in what we're asking, that's what we're asking for then.
Yeah, I think, again, this can happen at discussions. I have added in 3 more words. I really apologise, because I wanted to make it clear on the last point. So I've now added in, we are open to exploring both one-way and priority shuttle working at the top of Market Street and would welcome input from expert Wiltshire Council highway engineers as to which system is most beneficial to our priorities, to put in place on a trial basis. In case for some reason it's beneficial to the buses or to Wiltshire Council's aims, it needs to be to our priorities. So I've added that in, unless anybody disagrees. Yes, in the same vein, I take your point. Guidance. I'm happy with that. Anybody have strong feelings? No. Fine. Okay. Do I have a proposer for that motion as it currently is now? Simon, second to Sarah. All those in favour? We can all go home. One thing I just want to say genuinely is a massive thank you to all councillors, residents, council officers that have put their time into this project over the last 3 years. This is only the end of the beginning. There is more to do, but it's a good start. Next meeting's 5th of November.